Yeah, and I'm trying to think. Did Lisa tell you about our interest?
Welcome everybody to the May 21st, 2024 Tompkins County Legislature meeting. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we have the roll call of members, please?
Here.
Veronica Pillar. Lee Shirtliff.
Here.
Mr. Sigler's asked to be excused. Shauna Black.
Here.
Travis Brooks.
Here.
Randy Brown.
Here.
Amanda Champion.
Here.
Susan Curry.
Here.
Deborah Dawson.
Here.
John.
Here.
Ian Corman.
Here.
Mike Lane.
Here.
Dan Klein.
Here.
Who's present?
Thank you. We have 11 in chambers and 1 remote. All right. Presentation of proclamations, petitions, communications notices. We have 2 proclamations tonight. Is there anyone here to receive the proclamation for Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month? Okay. I will read an abbreviated version. Whereas in 1977, Representative Horton and Norman Y. Mineta introduced a United States House of Representatives resolution to proclaim the first 10 days of May as Asian Pacific Heritage Week. And whereas the vast diversity of languages, religions, and cultural traditions of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander people strengthens the fabric of American society. Resolved, the Tompkins County Legislature does hereby proclaim the month of May 2024 as Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander American Heritage Month. We have a second proclamation that Deborah Dawson will be reading.
Thank you, Chair. I was asked to read this because I think I'm the only veteran on the legislature. And I won't read the whole thing, but the important points, I think, are that whereas Memorial Day is reserved to honor and pay respect to the military lives that have been lost, a day set aside for veterans, military families, and civilians to decorate the grave sites of the late military service members whose sacrifice they want never to be forgotten. And whereas in this year, that we celebrate the 23rd anniversary of Memorial Day becoming a national holiday, we want to acknowledge the sacrifice for freedom is always close to home as we pay homage to the memories of the 12 sons of Tompkins County lost during the Vietnam War and 5 more local sons lost in military hostilities since the turn of this century. Therefore, be it resolved that the Tompkins County Legislature does hereby proclaim May 27th, 2024, Memorial Day in Tompkins County. And we encourage all residents to pay honor and respect to our fallen and late military members who put their lives on the line in defense of our freedom.
All right. J.R. Claiborne is here. Do you want to present? Or?
I've just got the big print version for old eyes. Do we have the official?
Yeah. Yeah, JR, come on up and speak and receive and all that.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone. I just want to share that, again, well, first, I should say thank you for your continued support for our veterans program. I think Sean had said a couple of meetings ago that it's weird to believe that almost 5 years ago, this July will be, end of July will be 5 years, that you didn't have a program. And now, almost 5 years later, we've got some things going that we're trying to publicize what's happening in our veterans community. And we know a lot of people around this county appreciate this gesture by the government. So by you all, thank you for them. And also just wanted to point out that whereas Veterans Day, which we get to do Veterans Week, is when we get to celebrate veterans and all the work, the accomplishments of veterans. This is a time where we actually take a moment to pause and reflect on the sacrifices given by individual service members and their families. For some people, this is not a day of celebration, it's a day of continue to remembrance, and for some families, it's still a day of mourning. So it's just good to remember that when folks are getting the barbecue grills out and things like that, that there is a moment of silence that should be paid to respect the people who have, as someone once said, went where a lot of the rest of us didn't go so you wouldn't have to go. So I thank you, everyone. Appreciate it, and please take a moment on Memorial Day. There are things happening around the county, most of them around 11 o'clock, so you only have to go to one at a time. But please take a moment and just pause and reflect. Thank you all.
Thank you, J.R. Claiborne, Department Head, County Veterans Services. How'd I do? All right, next up, we will be having an executive session tonight, and I will announce the purpose before we go in to that. And then I don't think there's any reordering of business. Does anybody have anything? Okay, very good. We are next up to privilege of the floor then. Privilege of the floor is a time for members of the public to address the Tompkins County Legislature. And if you wish to do so, we ask that you fill out one of these blue forms. It's in the back of the room. And I'm going to read the rules. Rules for speaking under privilege of the floor. I agree to a 3-minute time limit. I agree not to raise my voice. I agree not to use lewd, obscene, profane, slanderous, or libelous language, or speak or act in a manner that would tend to incite a breach of the peace. I agree not to speak about county personnel matters. Personnel matters include comments about the job performance of named county employees other than elected officials. After 3 minutes, I agree to leave the microphone and yield the floor. Transferring time to another person is not permitted. I agree to be courteous and not make comments, gestures, outbursts, or other disruptions while other members of the public or legislature are speaking. I agree that if I cause a disruption and I'm asked to leave, I will leave the chambers. First up is Zach Wynn.
Good evening. My name is Zach Wynn. I live here in the city. I imagine you have all now seen the New York Times story regarding the death of Thomas Rath, but in case you have not, I have forwarded it to you via email. The story confirms that Rath was kidnapped from Jungle 2 before being tortured on camera and ultimately murdered. Rath was a meth user, with the drug being the primary cause of his descent into life within the city's jungle encampments. The jungle continues to claim lives, with a death recently occurring in the exception zone behind Walmart on the 9th of this month. Dispatch audio indicated the death was likely an overdose, and I have forwarded pictures of the response to this incident by law enforcement and first responders. Nobody should be dying on city land. I have also included dispatch audio of an assault that was reported in Jungle 2 behind Lowe's from Wednesday the 15th of this month. This occurred simultaneous to a theft in the area, with the suspects heading in the direction of the jungle. An individual absconding from parole was ultimately arrested for one of these crimes. I've also forwarded drone photos of Jungle 2 that were recently taken, in addition to pictures of new encampments that have sprouted up along the fence line behind Walmart. The illegal behavior that was occurring in Jungle 1 behind Agway has not ceased, with the encampment's removal and cleanup, simply relocating to a new area. I believe you were all included in an email exchange I had with City Manager Deb Molinoff, where she made it clear that the city has no intention of ending the activity in Jungle 2, nor cleaning up the contamination of the area, which is clearly evident from the photos I have sent you, until an encampment response coordinator can be hired. This decision itself rests with the Common Council and is less than a certain proposition. In the meantime, more people are victimized. Recent press releases from the sheriff have detailed numerous recent arrests for methamphetamine trafficking. With meth dealers come meth users. Meth's presence in the community is undeniable and as much of a threat as fentanyl and tranq. With the Drug and Alcohol Council gone and the detox gone along with it, there are scant resources available for people struggling with addiction. I appreciated the answering of my questions regarding the ARPA funds for a drug detox during the Health and Human Services meeting. I suggest that these funds be used to begin the creation of an inpatient drug rehabilitation facility in the county as soon as possible. I would also like to again suggest the county consider creating a methamphetamine task force in a manner similar to the opioid task force to begin the effort to address this blight on the community. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any more blue cards. Are there any other members of the public who wanted to speak tonight? Okay. We are up to municipal official privilege of the floor. Patrick, welcome. Patrick, will you first tell me how to pronounce your last name, please?
Sure, it's keel, like keel of a ship. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like me to present from here, or is this good?
Anywhere you like,
Okay,
or anywhere you're
beautiful.
comfortable.
Yeah, thank you for having me tonight. It's lovely to see all of you, and it's great to be here. We have not had any voting meetings since the last time one of our officials came, Pierre, so I don't have any new legislative updates for you. However, we have been working through the disturbances of the new squeaky clean car wash, which is on 13, and so I figured I'd give an update about that. Some members of the public may have reached out to all of you, as they have certainly been reaching out to us, and we are working with local law enforcement as well as the business owner to resolve the situation as quickly as possible and see what we can do. And then, other than that, I also did want to speak briefly about the New York Times article, which was already mentioned, about Thomas Rath. And I know that this has been an ongoing conversation in the city and the county. And I just want to say that I'm looking forward to working with all of you. And I know that many of my colleagues are also looking forward to working with all of you to come up with solutions and figure out how to better support our community and find ways forward. So thank you. Is there any questions for me about what the city's been up to?
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Patrick? Mike Lane.
Thank you for coming.
Of course.
And we're concerned about certainly the same as you, that article and what happened. But I did have another question, and that is, for many, many years, Common Council meetings were broadcast on the educational, or rather the government operations, government access, not operations, channel on cable. And I haven't seen it lately. Has that stopped happening?
Yes, our Common Council meetings no longer stream on cable news. That is a conversation that we've been having with the broadcast network. They are streamable on YouTube, and everything is recorded and databased on the city's YouTube channel as well. We do have more subscribers in the county legislature. Just want to point that out. But we are
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
We do have more subscribers in the county legislature. But we are working with the broadcast studio to see if we can get our meetings streamed once again on cable. Though it is a longer conversation, you would suspect there, in our great day and age, that there would be an easy way to stream directly from YouTube to cable, but there's not. And so it would require us bringing in multiple cameras and a camera crew into our chambers, which yet we have not been able to figure out a way to do in a consistent manner. But those conversations are ongoing. We haven't completely given up on that. So hopefully I'll have a more thorough answer for you in the future.
I'm glad to hear you're still talking about it, because I know that folks do look at that. And I was thinking that in your cable franchise that you had the requirement of the cable company broadcasting that.
Yeah, so those questions are definitely, so Margaret Fabrizio, my colleague, is on that committee. I'm not, and I know that we just re-signed a contract with the Cable News Network. However, I think that those, like all things, are there's some complications, and I think that it is part of an old contract, but we're working with the cable news company to see if we can get those restarted. I definitely would like to see it. I think it's an equity issue for sure. I think that everyone deserves to have access to our meetings, as well as those of the county legislature, as well as those of the New York State Assembly and Senate. And so I would definitely like to see those streaming once again.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. I'll only ask this because you brought it up. Is there actually an issue with the squeaky clean car wash, or like something outside the requirements that they already went through with the planning and zoning board? I'm just curious, like, what council's plan or process is going to be to try to address that.
Yeah, it's been an ongoing issue for residents in the area. You can definitely walk over there, and most hours of the day, we've luckily been able to have a conversation with the business owner and limit the hours of vacuum operation to 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. But before that, it was 24 hours operation, and it is. I've walked over there a couple times, taken my dog for a walk. It is pretty awful. To be quite frank. It's very high-pitched, and I've been in communication with residents of the area who say it's very difficult to do anything at their homes. There are some residents who are actually moving out of the area because of the new business. So those are definitely conversations that we're having. Obviously, we would like to resolve it with the business owner and just have conversations about how his business is impacting the larger community and see if there's any ways we can move forward with that. I know that they have done sound readings in the area. However, it's very difficult to distinguish the noise of the business from that of Route 13.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to make that distinction and serve any tickets or anything.
Interesting. Yeah, you would think that if there was like a decibel meter issue or something like that, that it would be easily addressed. But it was interesting. I drove by the other day after reading the article, and I kind of looked and I said to myself, what neighbors? Because I know there's neighborhoods nearby to there, but you know, these type of things concern me a little bit because I understand people's right to complain and express their things, but I also, you know, there's a planning board, there's a process for that, and that went through the process and had that opportunity for public comment. So I just caution because, you know, do we get upset with the lights from Wegmans or the trucks backing up? Like, at what end do these type of things, you know, do we go too far in the corrective actions and things like that? So it's just interesting. I'm excited to watch how it plays out in the city.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you know, if there's anything that we can do on the city end to make people's experiences a little bit more livable, whether it's this issue or others in terms of light or other types of sound pollution, I think those are definitely steps we should take. I think there's a lot we can do on a whole range of legislative actions and capital projects to make life just a little better for our residents. So I'm excited to look forward to those and see what we can do both on the business side of things and then maybe infrastructure-wise to make it just a little bit better.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Veronica.
Thanks. I actually just have two comments, one to Greg, one to everyone. I only learned about the squeaky clean car wash issue at the city's May meeting, May 1st, when some of the nearby residents came to public comment to talk about it. And so I would recommend going back and watching that since you're always wishing for more public comment. I feel like you will very much enjoy that. And some of them do mention, like, they're used to the traffic, that's fine. This is a different flavor of noise that I'm guessing was not, like, played out loud at the planning board. And then the other thing for everyone, Tompkins County's YouTube channel is only 19 subscribers behind the city. So we could fix that tonight. Get on it.
I think it has a lot to do with the pitch too. Again, I definitely recommend that everyone walks over there and takes a listen. It's not something that I would want to be living around personally. And I know that you're living in a city, and I think that's an important justification to make, but it's also our duty to protect the communities that we represent, in my opinion.
Sure, and I mean, since you've engaged, I'll respond to that too. I think it's also important to strike a balance between the economic development of our economic core of the city of Ithaca and the county and those that live around it. I mean, there's the same car wash has the same vacuum cleaners with another resident right behind it further down 13. It's in Lansing, they're in Cortland, they're all over the place. It's just an interesting thing, and I'm curious to see how it plays out, because one of the things I think is challenging at times is when government moves the goalpost on folks, right? We put them through a process, we ask them to do certain things, and then we sort of change the game midstream or after something's done. So that's where I'm coming from with my questions.
Absolutely.
Veronica, did you finish your turn?
How much of an argument do we want to be in?
I don't want to be in an argument at
Then
all.
yes.
This is not our circus.
Randy.
Yes, thank you, Patrick. The county issued a notice of violation for an area of the jungle to clean it up, and I understand it's started to be cleaned up, maybe it is cleaned up. What are your thoughts on that? Where do you think the next steps are, and what are you looking for from the county to move forward to clean it up?
Yeah, thank you for your question. I know that those conversations are ongoing. We have talked about them in council. As some of you, I'm sure, know, and others may not, I worked as an EMT at Bangs Ambulance for many years, so I've spent many a day in the jungle, many hours, run many calls, and I definitely think that my perspective is that we need to be thinking critically about how we support people in the jungle. I think that, many of those people are not there by choice, and we need to be thinking about how we build infrastructure and create systems that support people and do not displace them. So, that is a difficult balance, as all things in government are, between making sure that places are safe and inhabitable, but also work to address underlying systemic issues and bolster people to better lives. So I know that those conversations are ongoing, to answer your question, and I think that I'm actually certain that the work has started to clean up that area. But I think that we also need to be very clear with ourselves that we are not displacing people in that process. And I think those conversations will keep going. And obviously, this is not going to, end as soon as the area is cleaned up, right? These are going to be conversations that we have and y'all have and we all have together for quite some time to come. So.
Any other questions or comments for Patrick? Thank you very much for coming.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
See you next time you're here. Lee, did you want to say something? Okay, legislative privilege of the floor. Lee.
I was just a little bit ahead of you. Two things. I'm probably encroaching on Mike's comments, but I see a few I voted stickers here today, and for those that may be out there listening to us live tonight, the school district elections and budget votes are occurring till 9 o'clock tonight, and I encourage everybody to get out. And I was pleased when I went in to vote in the Groton School District election to see that they've implemented the use of the county voting machines and some processes there, and I think it'll be a tremendous improvement. I'm glad to see that component happening in that realm. And the cooperation, obviously, there is between local governments. Second thing, I just want to make mention of the passing of a community member on May 9th, Tom Walpole. And Tom was a 25-year employee of Tompkins County, retired as a corrections sergeant when he was diagnosed 6 years ago with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and has put up a 6-year, very brave and commendable battle with that. And just want to make mention that Tom served Tompkins County very honorably in a very difficult role, and came into it after being a corrections specialist with the United States Army, and served in Germany and various institutions out in Kansas and other places. And just the second part of that is that when he came back to the Groton community, he became fully involved in the local life, and was a real strong member of our fire department, the American Legion, and if there were any type of benefit to be held to benefit a community organization, he was at the front of it. And I just want to make mention of that. He's an example of the type of person that makes a small town community, and we appreciate his contributions to country, county, and community. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah.
Thank you. We've got a resolution on our consent agenda tonight. The Department of Recycling and Materials Management is accepting a USDA grant for compost and food waste reduction to bolster the programs we currently have in place to try to reduce food waste. And I don't want to pull it off the consent agenda and make an issue of it, but one thing that really struck me about the memo that we got in support of this grant was that according to the EPA, 1/3 of food produced in the U.S. is never eaten, and food waste accounts for just under 25% of the materials sent to our landfills. I was just gobsmacked by those statistics. At a time when some people aren't getting enough to eat and others are struggling to just pay to feed their families, that's just atrocious. So I don't know that there's much of anything we can do about this except to ask people to be more conscious of their use of the food they buy, and for us to be more conscious and more conservative about what we buy and what we throw away. Thanks.
Thank you. Shauna.
Thank you, Jan. I have two announcements, the first of which is that every year I try and go at 2:30 for the Board of Elections annual election. And last year I was number 32, and this year I was number 110. So if that's any indicator of the turnout, it's a good sign. The second announcement that I have is this evening I have a certificate of appreciation for Daniel Klein, our chair, in recognition of 10 years of outstanding service to Tompkins County. So.
Number 3,650 something.
It's been an amazing 10 years. It really has. Thanks, John. Thanks, everybody.
It's like number 184 at mine.
You know, I had signed one of these at one point, but I guess you put a new one in. Okay. Randy.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that I went to Mother's Day dinner or breakfast, I'm sorry, at the Enfield Community Council, and it was put on by volunteers. The Enfield Community Council building is one of the nicest community spaces I think that Tompkins County has. All volunteers, and they had about 60 people come to that, so it was a nice event. A lot of food was donated from some local places. Also, there's a free rabies clinic at the Enfield Highway Garage on the 23rd from 7 to 9, and for cats and dogs, even ferrets and whatnot. And then Newfield's going to have a dedication on Friday, the 24th at 5 o'clock. They put a little memorial space down by the covered bridge, and also to recognize the improvements they did down there with the town's ARPA funds and also the county's hotel tax funds, covered about 30-some% of that. They did a really good job of that. A few more repairs to happen, but that's happening on Friday at 5.
Thank you. Any other? Mike Lane.
I was glad JR came in and spoke, and you spoke the proclamation about our veterans. And Deb, I'd like to say thank you for your service as a veteran.
Welcome.
And I think we've always had a veteran or two on the legislature, and I think I'm very pleased that we have a veteran continuing in you.
Oh, thanks, Mike.
The other thing I wanted to mention was that I think it's June 21st is Daniel Tompkins' 250th birthday, and for whom our county is named.
We could sing and he'd turn in his grave.
We're thinking about having a little birthday party here, maybe before the second meeting in June, and maybe have some cake and that kind of thing. Please, no presents, but I think it's important that we remember that former governor who was an important person in New York State. And Dominic has been telling me that he's been hearing from some other organizations out of area that are interested in Daniel Tompkins' birthday as well.
Rich.
I wanted to follow up on Deborah's comments about food insecurity in the community and just mention the Friendship Donation Network out loud because they do such incredible work. My wife volunteers, and so I've had a chance to help with carrying food around, but it is a remarkable network of restaurants and grocery stores and food suppliers getting food to people who need it that would otherwise go to a landfill or just somewhere else. It's remarkably efficient. I think they have one paid staff member, and everybody else is a volunteer. And the amount of food that's moved through the community is really surprising. It's just a great organization for that specific purpose. So, thanks.
Yeah, I'll just second that. I was involved with them in their early years for a number of years, and wow. I mean, there's like literally truckloads of food every day. Other legislator privilege of the floor. Ann Corman.
Thanks. You talked about composting and food diversion long enough that I felt I'll just chime in really quickly that also part of what the county through the recycling materials management department is doing is not just food that is unprepared, but as folks talked about, it's the food that is prepared that they're also working on, as are other great organizations in the community. Because as you can imagine, that's the more high value commodity. So somebody has already spent the time to purchase the food and prepare it. And so to get that food to folks who need it is really, I think, the highest level of diversion, I guess you could say, that we could do. And I just wanted to say that, and I've said this before, and probably a lot of folks know this, but when food, whether it's prepared or not, when it's sitting in a landfill, it's either doesn't digest or just sits there as trash, but eventually, if it ferments or decomposes, and it does it anaerobically because it doesn't have access to air, so it does so in a way that creates greenhouse gases, so it contributes to climate change also. So to get that out of there, whether, especially for people to use it, in some way would be the highest use, but at least to compost would be the next best. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other legislator privilege of the floor? Oh, sorry, Veronica. Yes.
Sorry, thanks. Two things. One, also adding into the food and food waste conversation, I just want to recognize and appreciate Tompkins Food Future and Katie Hallis and everyone involved with that, who did the food systems plan for Tompkins County, like 2 years ago, and have been continuing to work and gather and bring people together. There was a meeting a month-ish ago. Randy was there, and I was there too. And there's more, like, it's slow brewing, working on how we can change food systems to better serve anyone. I'd been hopping into the breakout groups with some of our recycling and materials management people and other people looking at food waste. So it's like slow working, but I really appreciate the base and coalition they've put together. And even from like last fall to now, there's been some concrete gains and progress forward in various places. For instance, there's a community kitchen that was an idea then, is like almost a reality now. Don't ask me for the details. And then on a different note, I also want to recognize and appreciate in the past month, for 18 days, the Coalition for Mutual Liberation at Cornell created a little community on the Arts Quad. I guess you could call it a protest encampment, had lots of names. And it was, even though it was actually pretty small, both compared to the Arts Quad, which if you approach it from the other end, this encampment looked really tiny, and compared to the Cornell student faculty body, I think the vast majority of which probably never went there and just went about their days in classes. But I got to visit a couple times, and it was a really beautiful space of solidarity between different generations, between students and staff and faculty and just community members, connecting just a whole bunch of issues of oppression and imperialism, like across history, across the world, tying it back to our locality. And it was kind of like a beautiful, liberating space. And I had nothing to do with making it, but I'm impressed with the coalition. I'm impressed with the way they closed it down on their terms. I think having had some meetings with the Cornell administration, but more importantly, creating a thing that was made by the people participating in it, and also closing it when it was time to close. So thanks for that to those who were involved. I learned a lot.
Any other legislator privilege of the floor? Okay, I have 2 items for my chair's report. Let me win, but if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt. This is the motto of the Special Olympics. The New York State Special Olympics, along with 1,200 athletes and coaches, is coming to Ithaca again. This is the third year in a row that we've hosted the Special Olympics, and it'll be the last year for quite a while because they like to move it around the state. It's going to be on June 14th and 15th. It takes place at Ithaca College, but also at a few other locations as well. They need a lot of volunteers to run this event. They say they need 450 volunteers to run it. There's no special training needed. There's no special skills needed. So if anyone's interested in doing that, please take a look at the New York State Special Olympics website. As part of the normal work of county government, we seek and receive many grants and other outside sources of funding that come into the county. I took a look at the agenda from the last legislature meeting, May 7th, and we had 4 resolutions on that agenda involving the acceptance of grants and outside money for a total of $3.7 million. At tonight's meeting, we have another 4 resolutions accepting more grant money for another $3.3 million in outside funding. That means we are going to accept more than $7 million of external funding into Tompkins County just in the month of May. The credit for this goes to the Tompkins County employees who day in and day out are looking for ways to bring in more money, but also just providing the expertise and stability and competence so that grantors are confident to know that the money here will probably be spent properly, accounted for, all that kind of stuff. So thanks to our staff for doing that. And the result of all this is that we have more services for county residents and that we have more money flowing through the local economy. I just thought it was worth noting $7 million in the month of May alone. Next up is a report by our county administrator. Oh, no, it's not. I'm sorry. Next up is our special topic presentation. We have tonight with us Elin Dowd, the Executive Director of the Greater Tompkins County Municipal Health Insurance Consortium, for an update. Elin, take it from here.
Thank you, Chair, for having me this evening. It's great to be back. For those of you who don't know, I worked for Tompkins County for a very hot minute several years ago, and it's fun to be back here and to present to you about the consortium that is aptly named Greater Tompkins County because it started here. Most people think I still work for the consortium, so half of my presentations in other counties is explaining that we are a separate organization. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I will let you know that one of my claims to fame while I worked here was I walked Jason Molino to his interviews when he was interviewing, and then I walked Lisa and Amy, coordinated their interviews when they were interviewing for deputies. So I'm just letting you know if you need my services, I am still available. But this evening, what I'd like to talk about is the consortium. For those of you who aren't familiar with the consortium, I'm going to provide a really quick update about who we are and what we're up to. So just a little education for new members, where we are now, talk a little bit about our financial situation, and then at the end I have an ask for you. As I said, we were started as a part of TCOG, and there were some very tenacious municipal leaders back in 2010 who felt there was a better way to offer health care to employees within Tompkins County area and in a rate-stabilized manner. At that time, premiums were going up double digit, sometimes with a 2 in front of it. It was really hard to control your budget, really hard to know what was going to happen the next year. And one of our founders, Don Barber from town of Caroline, was very tenacious with the Department of Financial Services at figuring out how we could offer a multiple municipal program here in Tompkins County. The mission at that time was high quality, cost stable health insurance, and that mission remains the same today. We have grown though. We started in Tompkins County. We're now in 18 counties. We are still in the process of getting our certificate of authority for Livingston and Monroe counties, but we are operating with members in at least 13 of our 18 available counties. Our members, as you can see from this list, come from all over the central New York region. We model our region after the Excelis Health Plans region because we utilize their network, their provider network, and their claims adjudication. And so we model a lot of our programs after them because it represents what's going on in healthcare in this region. We are a self-funded, multiple municipal cooperative. We are very unique in the state of New York. Most Article 47s, which is the insurance law we're governed under, are school districts. But we are made up of towns, cities, villages, and I think I said counties already. We can have school districts. We don't have any school districts. So in New York State, nobody else has been able yet to duplicate what we are doing up here. The reason we've expanded into more counties is because other people want to join us and be a part of this program that has been so successful in this region. So as a self-funded multiple municipal cooperative, we are considered one self-funded community governed under Article 47. We adopt a municipal cooperative agreement. We'll talk a little bit about that later. We're obligated to adhere to specific New York State mandates. So new health insurance laws that come through, we must put them into our plans. We are a large risk pool. So when I joined back in 2019, when I joined the consortium, we were around 40 million. We're about 70 million strong today. You as a municipal member, you're the owners. You write the benefit plans. You fill voting seats on our governing board. Thank you for allowing Lisa to serve in that capacity. You include labor in your governance structure. So we have several labor representatives from Tompkins County that sit on our joint committee. We are considered a large group health insurance plan. You would have been considered that anyway, but some of our smaller municipalities are not. So this is unique. So have we been successful with our mission? The answer, I think, to that is yes. We have had premium rate stability. If you look at our history since 2011, when you became members, we had high premiums at the beginning to build our reserves, and then we've gone down as low as a 3% premium increase in 2016. We averaged around 5 for a while. So in the last 5 years, we have averaged 5.9% premium increases. Have we been able to accomplish our mission of high quality? We built our metal level plans, as I said, to be competitive with the insurance marketplace around here. We review and update our benefit plans to remain compliant and relevant in the marketplace. We promote a culture of preventative health care through our wellness programs. Tompkins County, you have a very strong wellness program. We provide additional customer service and trainings. We work very closely with Sarah and Jessica and the rest of your human resource department, and we provide training to them on changes in healthcare legislation or our healthcare program. We offer a robust national and international provider network, so your retirees, when they leave here, they still have access to the Blue Card. The other thing we have tried to be is very efficient. 94% of our total expenses go to paying claims. We then have an additional 2 to 3% that go to our third-party administrators for claims adjudication, the provider network, that type of administration. Less than 2% of our costs go to pay our staff and any consultants that get involved in the business. So we're very stable. We're very efficient. We're also very stable. The reason for our stability is we've been able to build reserves. This bar chart in front of you shows you where we currently are or where we were at the end of last year with our reserves. We are required to have the first two reserves. So 12% of our claims we are always required to have on the books by the Department of Financial Services. That is for any runoff we would experience should something devastating happen to the consortium. The other reserve we must have in place is a surplus reserve that's about 5% of premium income. Those we can't touch. We then created, to remain stable, two other reserves. The rate stabilization reserve, which we have a goal of having between 2.5 or 10% of claims reserved to maintain rate stability. And then we also have a catastrophic claims reserve. We have a stop-loss insurance program at the $1 million level. So we're self-funded up to $1 million, but once we hit that $500,000, we have this catastrophic claims reserve for those high claims, so it doesn't create a ripple in our whole program. If we have any net income after we fund our reserves, it goes into an unencumbered fund balance. This total chart here represents about $23.5 million. Of that, half of it is in those reserves that we're not allowed to touch. So as we're talking about reserves and we're talking about the stability of the organization, what's happening with premiums within New York State? I heard Lisa mention something about 10% to put in the budget. Why on earth would we be asking her to do that? So a little history. Last year, when Excelis went to New York State to have their increase approved, they asked for a 12.6% increase, and it was approved at 12%. So if you look, that New York for individuals was around 12%, and small group rates were around 7%. The next slide will show you that Excelis was approved at a 12% increase. We remained at 8%. The rising cost of medical care, which includes patient hospital stays, the rapid increases in drug prices, those all continue to be main drivers in our healthcare costs increasing. So this is that history I showed you about Excelis and why they were asking for a rate increase around 12.6% and went to 12%. Inflation, new technical improvements in medical care. Some of you have been reading articles about the Medicare rate reimbursement increases in upstate New York for hospitals. That's causing a rise in claims. Prescription drug costs. FDA approved some weight loss management medication, if you hadn't heard. That's increasing our costs. So this is kind of the new normal after the pandemic. and everybody says this might be post-pandemic inflation, but it really appears that this is the trajectory that we are on. So if you look at this slide and you look at our history of where our claims to budget have been, in 2022, we came in below budget. We were recovering from the pandemic. Everybody went back to the doctor in 2023. We hit above budget, primarily in prescription drugs, which were $4 million over budget. So last year, we used that unencumbered fund balance to fund that over budget amount. And instead of giving a 12% increase last year like Excelis did, we used our rate stabilization reserve to keep that increase down to 8%. But what we're seeing trending in 2024 is we're still trending with high claims. So a little bit over in medical at the end of the first quarter, a little bit under in prescription drugs. April and May are tracking a little bit over. So that's why when people are calling us and asking us how should we budget for next year, we're being conservative and saying if you plan for around 10%, we think the cost will increase next year, and that may be a safe number for you to put in your budget. We start our budgeting process in June. We have some claims experience for the year. We talk a little bit more about it in July. In August, we present to our board where we think we're really going to land. We keep looking at the claims trending, and in September, we vote on our premium increase so that you can finalize your budget as well as all our other municipal members. So leading up to my ask, how are we governed? What do we look like? As I said, we're a pretty streamlined organization. There are only 4 staff members. We hope to add a 5th next year as we bring on new members, and that creates obviously more work for our staff. We have a board. Every municipality has a seat, so we have a 64 plus 10 labor representatives on our board. And we operate with an executive committee that Lisa's been a very active member of our executive committee. All the blue boxes in the middle, that's where all our work happens, including the joint committee, which has both a management and a labor collective bargaining unit seat. The green boxes are at the bottom is one of the ways we're allowed to be efficient. We contract out when we need services. So when we were a small organization, we contracted with Tompkins County Finance Department to be our treasurer and our accountant. And as we grew, we hired staff with a finance manager. We still use Tompkins County for IT. We don't have a full-time IT position, so we're very thankful that you allow us to utilize your staff, and that's why our emails say Tompkins County on it, because we also use your email system. And then, as I said, all of our claims adjudication and our provider network are outsourced to third-party benefit administrators. As I said, we operate through committees, so we have our board of directors and our joint committee on plan, structure, and design. The joint committee on plan, structure, and design looks at any benefit changes before they go to the board. That is where the labor seats are. And then we have the other committees that we ask our members to become engaged and involved in. Some of your staff members sit on our operations committee. One of the requirements of Article 47 is that in our municipal cooperative agreement, we must designate a fiscal officer of a participating municipal cooperation to be the chief financial officer of the health plan. From inception to today, that has been the City of Ithaca's controller. And we have tried to remove that requirement to actually name the municipality and to name the position, and the Department of Financial Services has said, no, no, no. You must name the municipality and you must name the position. They also want to review that before we make that change and make sure that the person is qualified to be a chief financial officer. With the retirement of Steve Thayer at the City of Ithaca and them being unable to fill that position, we are asking if Tompkins County would step in and provide the chief financial officer responsibilities for the organization. And I did talk to Lisa and Lori, so this isn't a surprise. And we know that Lori reports to this body, which is why I'm in front of you today. So what does that mean? What are the CFO responsibilities and why are we asking you? I think number one for you, it's very important. You are the largest member of this organization, and our fiscal responsibility should be very important to you. And what we're doing with our reserves, how we are raising premiums, and how we are spending our money. Will we remain true to our financial goals that were established in Tompkins County several years ago? So the CFO may delegate their responsibilities, their day-to-day responsibilities, and those would be delegated to the finance manager. We had to change our municipal cooperative agreement a few years ago when Rick Snyder resigned. He was the treasurer. We now had a staff member in the finance manager. So with that, permission was given to the finance manager under the supervision and direction of the CFO. And let me tell you, our finance manager is very independent and operates under the direction of the executive director and the board of directors. So it doesn't really need a lot of babysitting. But when it comes to our financial reporting, we do need a representative from a municipal cooperative to sign off on our quarterly and annual jurettes that we must report to the Department of Financial Services. They also participate in our annual audit and participate at committee levels. Is this a real time-consuming job? Not really. The most time-consuming part of the job is attending meetings. We are trying to make as many of our meetings remote, so Lori doesn't have to come. We have moved up to Cayuga Heights, so Lori wouldn't have to come to those meetings unless it was a meeting regulated by open meetings law like our board meeting. But we tried to be as flexible as possible. The other thing Lori would have to do, sign off on some forms, usually the abstract. That happens during a meeting, so when she's attending, she could be able to do that. But no day-to-day responsibilities. Steve Thayer barely set foot, I shouldn't say that, he came to all our meetings, but he didn't come to perform a CFO position. He performed it in a oversee management level. So that's what we're asking for Tompkins County to provide for the consortium as we move forward, and would really like to keep you involved in our organization in a very significant way, especially since some of the pioneers of the consortium have started retiring and are leaving the organization. I think the Village of Cayuga Heights representative, the mayor of Trumansburg, who is currently our chair, and Danby are the only original representatives from when the consortium began. And we know how important it has been to Tompkins County, and we do reports with you on how much money you have probably saved by being a member in the consortium since its inception. So I thank Lisa and Lori for meeting with me and entertaining this possibility, and for you listening to me this evening and entertaining, supporting our ask. So 2 questions I'd like to answer. One is, what if our finance manager resigns? Will the finance department of Tompkins County have to take on all this responsibility? And the answer is no, they will not. We've hired consultants in the past to fill that responsibility. We are putting a succession plan in place, so some of the day-to-day responsibilities will continue to happen with other staff members, and we would recruit and replace for that position immediately. So day-to-day responsibilities would not fall on Tompkins County. If they did, we would compensate you for any time of your staff members. We also know that Tompkins County doesn't have a lot of free time, so we wouldn't want to tax Tompkins County staff members. And then the other topic is time. How much would we take Lori away from this organization? And it's really our meetings. We do have executive committee meetings at the end of the day, once a month, about an hour, and then about 5 to 6 times a year, the finance committee meets, and we would ask Lori to attend those meetings. Our board meetings are now down to 1 board meeting a year and an educational session before that. So that's the time commitment that we are asking. So I thank you for considering that, and I'm happy to entertain any questions that you might have this evening.
Questions? Rich?
I had a couple. On the slide you showed us with the discretionary catastrophic claim pool, has that been tapped? Have we had an incident?
Yes.
What was the nature of what happened that you tapped into that?
Last year, for example, we had 4 members throughout the consortium that hit over 500,000, and we removed 800,000 from the pool to supplement anything above the high 500,000. Then through this budgeting process, we then fund that reserve back to replace what was taken out the year before.
Okay, thank you. And then my second one involves the slide with the actual versus budgeted claims over the years. And it looks like there's been substantial growth year on year from 2015, except for 2022. Is that reflecting growth of new communities coming in, or is it just more claims inside the communities, or both?
It's reflecting both. But yes, we have grown in our membership. I'm sorry, I don't have each year of the growth in front of me, but in 2022, we moved into Onondaga County and brought on some larger municipalities up in Onondaga County. Previous to that, in 2019, Seneca County came on board, so we're starting to see the growth of those municipalities. And in addition to that, claim costs are rising in general.
Thank you.
Deborah?
Thank you. So a couple of questions about your ask. It says on your slide that the chief fiscal officer shall receive no remuneration from the consortium. Is that something under state law, or is that something that's written into your cooperative agreement?
That is state law. That's quoting Article 47 of New York State insurance law.
Okay. And then I'm a little confused. I guess the finance manager is under the supervision and direction of the chief fiscal officer, but then it says the chief fiscal officer may never delegate their ultimate authority and shall remain responsible for ensuring that things are operated as they should be, which to my mind means that Lori's going to have to do a little more than just go to meetings, unless she just wants to blindly sign off on. And I don't say this to cast any aspersions on the honesty and competence of your finance manager, but, you know, were I in Lori's shoes, I wouldn't just sign off.
Yeah, well, I may have said that a little too off the cuff. By attending the finance meeting, Lori is seeing all those financials on a regular monthly basis through the executive committee as well as through the finance meeting. When the jurat comes out, Lori is presented with the jurat. We also have consultants who do a book of where all our where all the premiums are going and how the claims are being spent, the trending, the history. So we have several people feeding that information to Lori so that she can preside over it and does not have to create that information herself.
Right, I understand that, but she does have to be comfortable with the accuracy of that information, because at the end of the day, it's her name on the dotted line. And just judging from the presentation that you've made here, there's a lot of numbers.
Correct.
Okay.
Shauna.
Yeah, I have a few questions. I guess I was wondering, for Lori, is this something that you would want to do? And then the second question, would the extra duties here need you to have more county staff to support you?
Thank you for asking that. I am happy to help in any way that I can. And so if this is something that Tompkins County wishes me to participate in and do, I am happy to do that. I have met with Elin and her team a few times. I'm impressed with their organization, pretty much from day one when I started the county. So I am excited to work with them. I do have a background in healthcare financial things. I am certified healthcare financial professional. I worked for a medical facility in Seneca County for over 10 years. And when I started at Ontario County in the early days, I worked with all the health departments, so the mental health, public health, their nursing home, their CHA at the time. So I do feel it's a good fit. I did grill Elin on the time commitment because that is my concern. And particularly, she answered the question right out of the gate. I think the first question I asked her is, if something goes south, I can't have our staff doing this. So we cleared that up right from the beginning. I have spoken to some of you individually that I feel on a whole, the finance department is understaffed. And I would like to ask for additional positions. I'm concerned, right now we're vacant. We have vacant staff in the understaffed office, so we are really understaffed. So I am doing some of the work that needs to get done. Elin has assured me that this is a minimal time commitment, and I'm happy to help with that. Regardless of whether I was serving in this role or not, I still would ask for additional support and staff in the finance office.
And then I just had one other comment that's a little bit aside from the information you provided. And it's my concern, and I've had employees approach me in regards to the mental health that's offered with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and the providers that are listed have no openings. And so people are having to go to private providers and pay out of pocket. And so, I hope this concern comes to you. I have gone to Ruby before, as well as Blue Cross Blue Shield, and there's been no response. Because as a county, we're trying to help our constituents, but I think we really need to also listen to our employees who are saying that we have this great insurance that covers everything, but people are really struggling to find mental health providers, and whenever sessions are going for $150 to $300 per hour, paying out of pocket for that can really be stressful for our employees. So.
Yes, and those concerns have come to us, and it's a concern in general for the consortium, access to care. You can have a great program, and if there is no access to care, nobody values that program. So we've been working, one of the things the Joint Committee has been very vocal about is access to mental health care. Some of that is the problem beyond Tompkins County, New York Nation, that there isn't that many providers or providers accepting insurance. So we meet with the provider department of Excellus Blue Cross Blue Shield. We have had them reach out to providers in this area who have basically said, no, thank you. My services are full. I don't need to be part of the network. But we are now exploring, and one of the benefits that came out of the pandemic is telehealth. So MD Live is building up their mental health provider network. We are researching other providers just a little outside this community. We have found some resources in Rochester that dip in a little further, closer to Tompkins County. So if you do want to see a professional in person, also you can see a professional from them in telehealth. So our staff has been working very closely with either the individuals who are asking for this, but also the HR departments. We did contract for a cost-effective structure with an employee assistance program. That is not an answer for mental health, but it's another resource to help find resources. So if we aren't helpful, they can also be helpful in referrals, whether it's a telehealth or an in-person referral. But this is an issue that we're very concerned about, and I wish I had a great solution today, but we are going to keep working on that situation.
Randy.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation and information. I have a few questions. When is your 2023 audit going to be completed, and can we get a copy of that?
Yes, it has been completed. It's been approved by the audit committee, and it's already posted on our website,
Okay.
but I can send a copy and have Lisa distribute it.
Okay. And before I forget, Shauna, the Learning Web did a presentation for the Youth Services Department, and they have grant funding for counseling for families and children, and they can't seem to, the schools just aren't cooperating. So they have openings, so I just wanted to share that with you. Thought that was really interesting. You mentioned that the RX is up like $3 million in 2020, maybe it's $4 million.
$4 million in 23.
Yeah. We're drugging our Americans, and there's so many drugs available, and more drugs come out. Every commercial I see is more drugs for people. So is there anything that the consortium can do and look at? Is there overuse of drugs, or are you looking at those types of things? Or?
Yes. So one of the things, and I'll just use this because it's the sexy drug right now, is weight loss management. And you know that some of those drugs are also used for diabetes, and manufacturers have been very slick in how they present it to the end consumer. Diabetes, it's called one name. For weight loss, it's called another name, and it's a higher cost, and it's primarily the same drug. This kind of happened, went under the radar, and then all of a sudden costs were escalating up. We have now partnered with Excelis, who have put provider prior authorization in place, so that if you are on a weight loss management program where you are seeing a physician, have been seeing a physician, if you continue in a weight loss nutrition program for at least 3 months prior to your approval, and then you continue in that, that drug would be approved. But if you don't check off all the boxes, that drug is not utilized for cosmetic purposes. So overutilization in that area. The other thing we look at is genetics whenever they're available, because people are caught up in the commercials and what is being presented to them every day, and they want that drug at that price when there's alternates available. And that's one of the other reasons we partner with ESI, which is part of the Excelis medical management team, to see what we can put in place, step therapy programs, things like that. But as far as overuse of medications in our program, we look for Excelis to help manage that because we ourselves are not healthcare professionals. We outsource that. And I sit on an advisory board at Excelis where this information is being presented on a regular basis because it's a huge problem within America. And Excelis is trying to work with their partners to not only bring the cost down for the employees, but also for the employers.
Rich.
Lori, I'm fine with this. If you could just let us know if the time commitment is too much.
Mike Lane.
If we ask Lori to do this, and then is there an escape clause here somewhere? After a year or something?
Right. We would, number one, we have to get approval from the Department of Financial Services, and then every year we review our municipal cooperative agreement, and we would have to ask them to approve if we were to shift to another municipality. So yes, we could.
So the escape clause subject to approval by the state?
We would request that we change by the state, yes.
Okay. And the other question I have is about membership. We have some municipal libraries that we fund in Tompkins County, and they are very interested in being part of the consortium. I noticed that Lansing Community Library is there. I assume that's because it's a school district public library, but I'm not sure. But Newfield and Southworth and Ulysses are association libraries. And what do we need to do so that they could join? I'm thinking of when we got special legislation so that the Soil and Water Conservation Service could join.
So that is exactly what we would have to do, is the process we would have to go through that we went through initially to get the Soil and Water Conservation to join in Tompkins County, but now they come through you as an employer of record. It's legislation. We would have to put legislation in place to change Article 47. So anytime a library approaches us, we go through a process with them to see how they were incorporated. And if their incorporation fits the Article 47 rules, we allow them to apply for membership. And we've gone round and round with Department of Financial Services, and until legislation changes, we won't have community libraries, and we won't have some of the authorities as a part. Jason Molino would love to be a member, and they don't qualify currently to be a member.
Who would like to be a member?
I'm sorry, Jason Molino's new position, he knows about the consortium. He's
where his
in Livingston County.
Gotcha, okay.
Way that water and sewer are organized very differently in very different counties, and they're not all qualified to join.
So if the libraries wanted to do this, what would we need to do? I sit on one of the library boards. What do we need to do to get your help to see if we can get this state legislation?
So I think what we would do is try to look at commonalities of incorporation, so that if we did approach some of our local assembly members to assist us advance a bill, that we would make sure we were articulating a more comprehensive group into law.
Okay, well, I'm all ears.
Okay, great. Look forward to the conversation.
Any other questions or comments on this subject? I'll throw in two quick things. One is libraries, also TCAT. When I was on the TCAT board, I tried to make something happen and came up to dead ends with that. And then my other question, I guess, is for us. I'm sorry, Elin, you said you need state approval first if we're going to have our our staff be your chief financial officer. And then presumably we would need a resolution here at the county as well. Does that sound right?
Yes, please.
Okay, last call, questions, comments? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your
Thanks for
time.
the consideration.
Yeah, I guess I'll start on the way out. I'll say that, this program is so important to us, to our staff, to our finances, and to the state. we're like the gold standard in this one. And yet we haven't really spent much time here at the legislature hearing about it and talking about it. So this was very valuable, I think. Thank you. Next up, reports. First, County Administrator Lisa Holmes.
Thank you, Dan. And since I joined county administration, I've been involved with the consortium on various committees and on the board, and I too will say it's been time well spent. But for my update tonight, we are putting the budget process continually into motion with a budget launch meeting this week with departments and agencies. And this budget season, we are going to be asking departments and agencies to submit 2 budgets. One, what it will take to maintain current efforts, which may require over-target requests. And then secondly, excuse me. Secondly, a budget with a 5% cut. So, thank you, Lori.
Lisa, we can come back to you if you'd like.
I think I should be able to get through it.
Okay.
It's a really brief update, but
But that 5% cut really chokes you up, doesn't it?
it does. It really does. So the 5% reduction is consistent with the parameters that were outlined at the budget retreat to help us deliver a budget within a 2% levy increase. So we're off and running with the budget preparation, and next week we begin capital budget conversations with departments who have capital projects in the 5-year capital plan. And that's my update. Thank you.
Questions or comments for the county administrator? Greg.
This all sounds great, and I wonder if my colleagues would also be as interested as I and maybe one other legislator sitting around the table, but to understand what are some strategies that we potentially could deploy to look at use of excess fund balance or putting capital payments in reserve, et cetera, with the opportunity of maybe not having to have a 2% levy increase, but also what are some of the other strategies that's not just department cuts, but looking holistically at some creative things that maybe are outside the normal things we talk about during that process that we could have a conversation around. I mean, is that something that county administration and finance is looking at?
It's something that county administration has been looking at in the context of the budget preparations, and something we certainly touched upon at the budget retreat. So, yeah, beyond that, I don't know that there's I don't have any other creative solutions up my sleeve. It's either increase revenues or reduce expenses, ultimately. So,
Or
I think
vacancy rate or use of fund balance, potentially?
use of fund balance will work for one time, and certainly we've discussed the vacancy rates, and we have, I think, a pretty solid foundation for why we've chosen the where we're at with them. We can certainly discuss further, but yes, I certainly am not. I don't relish asking for 5% cuts across the departments, but I think in order to come in and be able to continue continue or advance the stated priorities of many in the county, I think we're going to need to use all of these different tricks, not just one.
Yeah, I guess my biggest thing is I'd really like to look at debt payment reserves, and are there other debt payments or things that we could set a amount of money aside for to lower, because that is not one time, right? That pays dividends really to the levy if we can set fund balance aside to pay for debt service.
Yes, and that's something that certainly we discussed at the legislature, but I don't think that doing that in and of itself will get us to where we need to be.
No, just one probably strategy of many.
That's right.
Randy.
Thanks for the update, Lisa, and the two budget looks makes sense. I think 5%'s not realistic. I did some research, and Onondaga's hotel tax is 7%. Ours is 5%. So I think there's opportunity. We should definitely be looking at that. 1% increase in hotel tax would be $800,000. Is that right? Something like that. So $4 million now you're pulling in, something like that? Yeah, something like that. I think that we should do it to balance the airport that's losing, unfortunately, $600,000 a year or more. And there's projects, and they need additional funds for other projects that we're doing. So I'd like to see us do that. I feel that, and I know, that our reserves are growing. They grew a lot last year, and primarily because I think we budgeted 807 employees. We ended up with 707 employees, if my memory serves correctly. And I think that the look at staffing to see which staffing is definitely needed, I think that was somebody's idea here, which is a really good idea. And because employees are obviously the cost, but obviously we do need some new employees in some departments, as Lori stated. But I think the message we're sending to nonprofits about not increasing the COLA is irresponsible. I think that our nonprofits are the people on the ground. They're the ones doing the hard work, and they have volunteers. And we've heard from everybody that volunteers are hard to find. They're hard to find, and positions are hard to fill. The cost of everything is up. And to not support the entities that are really on the ground doing the work, I think is a bad message. If you cut the COLA, it's going to be a decrease in people for some of these nonprofits. And to put another $10 million in reserve or more, it might be 12, I don't know for sure, and then this year another 5 or whatever it is, and we increased our reserves all the way through COVID, to put it in the bank to make us feel better and secure, because that's all it does, it doesn't help anybody else, is not offering any hope or giving anybody the opportunity to come up with solutions. They're just trying to tread water. So I think we should be looking at this differently.
Thanks. I just want to mention a couple times you said you in there, but it is we, right? It's us that are, okay.
Right. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you. Shauna.
Thank you. You know, it's been interesting because I think people have received their tax bills and they've seen numbers, and we're all kind of painted as the bad guys right now. You know, and unfortunately, I don't think people are diving in deep enough to realize that the school district is different from the county, which is different from the town, and we're all painted in this picture that we're not using the resources as well as we should. And so I think it's important that our public knows what our goal is as the legislature, and that's to look at the way that we're spending money. The fact that we have a budget process that is so robust. I mean, the fact that we go department by department, we look at our staff, we look at our expenditures, we look at our revenue, like that is the most thorough process I've ever seen in my life. And it takes a long time, and we're all here, and we get grumpy, and we get pissed at each other, and you know, sometimes it's fun. Mike buys us pizza the first night, which is probably the best night. But you know, the reality is, at the end of the day, whenever we vote for our budget, it's a budget that we know where every single penny is going. And that, you know, for me personally, that's something I feel really good about. That's not something that our school districts do. And, that's something that I feel like if you're accepting tax funds, that's something that everyone should know where that money's going to. So, with that said, I know that we're going to have a robust conversation for budget, but I also, I think all of us take the budget process really seriously, and that's why we're so passionate about the different views that we have, is because we don't want to run anyone out of town. We don't want it a situation to be where our seniors can't afford living in our county. That's not any of our goals. And so we're always here, we're always listening, and I hope that our community trusts that, this legislature is going to do the best they can for this budget season.
Mike Lane.
To Randy's point about the not-for-profits, and I agree with you, Randy, but it's not Lisa's fault here. She took direction from the legislators. I want to make that clear.
Greg.
Yeah, just Randy, to respond to the room tax idea for the airport, I'm more than happy to bring that topic up to the Strategic Tourism Planning Board, and if it makes sense, have the conversation in HED, and I'm sure it would have to work its way through other committees, but I know that's not the first time you've mentioned that, so I just wanted to put it out there that I'll carry that message or request forward and see what we can come back with.
Anything else on the county administrator's report? All right. Sometime last year in 2023, we asked our assistant county attorney to become the acting county attorney 8 or 9 months ago, something like that. 10 months ago.
Counting.
It took a couple of searches. It took a lot of time. We really thank you for stepping up to the plate. You have really done a great job. And I'm saying that because this is your last report as acting county attorney. We have a new county attorney starting on Tuesday.
All right, well,
Take it away,
thank you. It's actually been my pleasure. Yeah, sometimes it's been a little tough, but I think, mostly we made it through. The time's gone by really fast, actually. I can't even believe I've been doing it for that long. But I will be very happy when Maury shows up on Tuesday. I mean, I'm hoping he's going to show up on Tuesday. Aaron and I met with Maury yesterday for about 2 hours, going over everything, getting him up to speed. So that was really great that he was willing to come in and start thinking about some of the priorities that we have going on in the office, places where he can jump right in and start taking over some things. So it was a great meeting. And yeah, we're really looking forward to him coming on Tuesday. As far as an update, it's been a very busy couple of weeks. So since the last meeting, I've assisted 16 departments. I had 9 court appearances. That included a family court trial and a mental health hearing. And that's pretty much it, so.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Holly? All right. Mike.
When she says she did a trial, you don't just do a trial. You prepare for it. And that's not an easy thing to do. And you kind of say it as though you kind of do it in stride, but I know it takes a lot of work. All the better.
Okay, Director of Finance and nominee for Chief Financial Officer of the Healthcare Consortium, Lori Scarrett.
Thank you. I want to shout out to Holly, too, as a thank you. I've given her a lot of tasks over the last 10 months, and she has stepped up to the plate and provided a lot of support to the finance office, and I appreciate it. She's always done it with a smile, so thank you, Holly. As far as updates, the in-rem foreclosure process, we currently have 20 properties in the process, 8 residential, 12 vacant and commercial. We do have 2 that are on the docket to have installment agreements. As soon as they show up with their down payment, we hopefully will be down to 6 residentials. The other Update is our auditors. This is their last week on site doing the field work, and then they will be doing the rest of the audit off-site, so that is welcome news to us. I want to thank the finance office staff. They have stepped up tremendously and gotten them the information in a very timely manner, and the audit has gone very smoothly, and I'm very, very pleased. So I just wanted to thank the finance staff publicly because they have really stepped up. They're estimating that they will have the final financial statements to you by the July meeting. So that is what we're shooting for. And that's all I have tonight.
Questions or comments for our finance director? Mike Lane.
Lori, the 6 residential, are they occupied?
I'll have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure.
Okay, that's fine. Excuse me.
I mean, I know some of them are. I just don't have the number of.
That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Oh, Rich.
A point of order. Do we need a resolution appointing her or approving the appointment?
For the chief financial officer, that is not ready yet.
I think
That's coming.
So they have to get state approval first, and then I believe we'll have a resolution.
Okay, we will take a vote. Good.
Okay, thank you. Are there any resolutions to be added to or withdrawn from the agenda? Amanda.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Klein. I'm going to actually withdraw Resolution N, adoption of the Strategic Operations Plan, and take that back to Government Operations for another little tweak, and then we will bring that back here in June.
Thank you. Any other additions or deletions? Okay, then we are up to the consent agenda. Consent agenda, resolutions and appointments to be voted on as a group unless any member of the legislature requests that a resolution or appointment be instead included separately and individually as part of the business of standing or special committees. Got one appointment to the Tompkins County Historical Commission, Patricia Longoria? Longoria, thank you. Okay. From the Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee, Resolution A, award of contract, confidential paper shredding services, Department of Recycling and Materials Management, ID 12425. Resolution B, Department of Recycling and Materials Management, acceptance of grant funding from the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA, ID number 12429. From the Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, Resolution C, authorizing award of bid and anticipated receipt and acceptance of Federal Aviation Administration, BIL, FAA, and New York State Department of Transportation, NYSDOT, grant for terminal apron rehabilitation, Ithaca Tompkins International Airport. From the Government Operations Committee, Resolution D, resolution to update the Administrative Policy Manual, Policy 05-13, allowable and unallowable food expenses, ID 12333. Resolution E, resolution to update the Administrative Policy Manual, Policy 0509, petty cash, ID 12330. Resolution F, resolution to update the Administrative Policy Manual, Policy 04-10, travel and training expense reimbursement, ID 12329. Resolution G, request for target funding, procurement and contract software, County Administration, ID 12395. And Resolution H.
Off, please.
Resolution H is off. Can we have a motion to approve the rest of the consent agenda? Travis moves, Susan seconds. Roll call vote, please.
Greg Mezzi?
Yes.
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff?
Yes.
Shauna Black?
Yes.
Travis Brooks?
Yes.
Randy Brown?
Yes.
Amanda Champion?
Yes.
Susan Curry?
Yes.
Deborah Dawson?
Yes.
Dunn?
Yes.
Ann Corman?
Yes.
Mike Lane?
Yes.
Dan Klein?
Yes.
It's 13 ayes. Consent agenda adopted.
Thank you. All right, standing and special committees. Start with Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee, Ann Corman, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. Our committee met on Monday, May 13th, and we had annual reports from the Environmental Management Council, as well as the Tompkins County Water Resources Council. Regarding the Planning and Sustainability Department, one of the updates was the 2024 Municipal Parks and Trails Grant Program. And a special note that there is still money in that. They had a round, and all of the money wasn't granted yet. And this has happened before, where they've then, kind of done a second round to get different municipalities to apply for the money. There's 50,000 total, and there's 21,900 remains. And you should have got an email about this earlier today from Darby Kiley at our planning department. And information was also sent out again to municipalities in the county that did not already receive a grant this year. So please remind your municipalities, especially if they haven't received a grant yet. And we had an update on the municipal law 239 L, M, and N. And so if you've probably heard those numbers and letters before. And so if you want a little bit more in depth of what they are, please go to our YouTube recording and get a little update from that. At the Yellow Barn, the folks from this Yellow Barn Solar Project came and spoke to us. So that is poised to be the largest solar farm in Tompkins County. And it's located 25% in Lansing, 75% in Groton. And it's mostly a forest and scrub land, about 800 acres that they purchased and leased, and it's just north of the Dryden border. They believe they're going to start construction in the spring of 2025 and be online in 2027. And when the project's completed, they believe they will provide enough electricity for 30,000 homes. And just to give you a sense of the size of that then too, there are approximately 40, and I could be off, and so someone can correct me, approximately 47,000 housing units currently in Tompkins County. So I'm glad to see this project coming online soon. And I had somebody recently ask me, well, don't we already have enough solar electricity in the county for everybody? Some counties aren't doing a lot, let's put it that way. But anyway, so sometimes you'll have more concentration in certain areas. So personally, I'm glad that Tompkins County is doing their part and maybe a little bit more. One other thing I wanted to note was regarding a report from our Recycling and Materials Management Department regarding the Caswell landfill leachate update. And they noted that there is a 317% price increase through the Ethico wastewater treatment plant to take that leachate and process it. In addition to that, they are seeing a 30% increase in volume of leachate that is coming from there. So more to come on that, and we're going to keep an eye on that. And those are the biggest highlights, unless, Veronica, was there anything that I missed that you wanted to put in there?
I think you got it. Thanks.
Okay, and our next meeting is Monday, June 10th at 10 a.m.
Thank you, Ann. Are there any questions for the Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee? Rich?
I think Mike's iPhone was on the screen.
Yes, thank you. We have become aware of that. Okay, thank you, Ann. Next up is Community Recovery Fund Advisory Committee. all of the money that we used to fund the Community Recovery Fund was ARPA money, the American Rescue Plan Act. And because it's that money, there are a lot of strict guidelines and a timeline. And one of the timelines is that all the money has to be allocated, I guess is the word, or designated by the end of this year. So that puts us in this situation where if we start to wonder if some of these projects may not get completed, we need to start thinking about that. Because if we don't reallocate the money by the end of the year, and then the project does not get done, we've lost that money, we give it back to the federal government, and probably nobody wants to do that. So we have our next committee meeting coming up on June 24th at 10:30, and one of the big topics we're going to take on at that meeting is discussing how we start imposing deadlines, what that looks like, how we decide whether we think a project's going to be finished or not in time, and then also talk about how we would reallocate that money if there is money to be reallocated. There will be some. We're not sure how much yet. Any questions or comments on the Community Recovery Fund? Mike Sigler.
I don't, but if once you're past this, if we could go back for a sec. I'm sorry, I had trouble ringing into the call.
No problem. Welcome to the meeting. Let me just make sure there's nothing else in the Recovery Fund. Okay. Go ahead, Mike Sigler.
No, I just wanted to correct the record on something. It was characterized as this yellow barn solar was going on mostly scrub land. That's just factually inaccurate. If you go out to the land, it's pretty much mostly active farmland. It runs right up Cobb. It runs from Van Osten Road, if you know the area, all the way down Cobb. And yeah, that's mostly active. I mean, I'm not actively opposing this or anything, but it does eat up a lot of farmland, about 800 acres just for the solar panels. It'll eat up, close to 1,000 acres if you add in all the fencing and everything like that. The other dilemma there is that there's houses like there, and I'm hoping that CS Power does do some kind of accommodation for the people that are actually living and will be now surrounded by this industrial scale solar site. And we'll see also what the pilot has negotiated. The state is going to be doing that, not the town. The town will have very little say, frankly, in any of the decisions that are being made on that power. And the other concern is that there's another industrial scale solar that's about 1,200 acres that could be put right next to it that has also submitted plans to NYSERDA. So there's a lot more going on up there than I think that we've been led to believe. So anyway, that's what's going on up there.
Okay, thank you. We're going to continue on the agenda. We are now up to the Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee. Mike Lane, Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. We met on May 24th. I think the highlight was the reports from our Director of Finance, who gave us the quarterlies on sales tax and our investment, and also brought us up to date on our contingency account. Sales tax was only up, 1.6%, I think, this quarter, which is better than a loss that some counties have seen, but it's not where we ought to be. So we have to keep watch of that, and sometimes folks think there's going to be, the sales tax is going to save us on our budget process, but it's not looking that way right now after first quarter figures. And contingency, of course, we're dipping into that on a regular basis for different things that come along. That's what it's for. But in the past, we've had to replenish that account toward the end of the year. So we put some more into it last year, and let's hope that it's going to get us through. But we need to keep track of that, which we are in our mind when it comes into the budget process. We heard from Human Resources Department about the administrator search process. They are focusing on a a consultant to help us find someone like we have used in the past. And they're going to need to know what we want to do about a salary, and also if we're going to offer any relocation benefits for that position. So we're going to be talking about that more at the Finance Committee. In our next meeting, we're going to be talking about airport staffing. There is a proposal that came through F&I, or discussed at F&I already, about substituting county employees for contractual services for such things as the cleaning and maintenance of the airport and for a couple of operational staff. I know that our county administrator has been in discussions with our airport director about that, and but there are questions. I've talked to some of the other legislators, so we need to discuss this a little more, get some more facts and figures so that if this comes forward, that everyone is comfortable with it if we do this. I've got one resolution. There's a couple of resolutions we passed, so it'll be coming to the next meeting. Shauna, was there anything else you wanted to mention?
I actually, and this might be wrong, but I think our sales tax revenue was actually negative. I want to say it was negative from this time last year. Lisa?
I think for the quarter, it was down by 2.14%, but maybe for the month, it was up 1 point.
We were both right.
Perfect.
Okay.
Lori can set us straight, I'm sure. I wrote down a couple of figures. I have both of those. I have an arrow up at 1.6%, and I have a negative 2.14%. So I think we both heard both of those. So.
High five.
All right. Any questions or comments for Mike? Mike Sigler, is your hand still up, or did you just leave it up?
You know, I have one question, Dan.
Yeah.
Randy brought up an interesting suggestion of increasing the hotel room tax, and I think that's actually a really good idea. A reminder on how to do that: we have to appeal to our state representatives, and then they have to bring forth a bill. Is that correct, Mike?
Yes, it would have to be next year.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
But I think it's not too early to perhaps put it on our June BCP agenda to begin discussing if that's what Randy wants to do. He's brought it up, and I'm willing to do that.
Thank you.
Deborah?
So if we go that route, my understanding is that our use of sales tax is currently limited to things that are related to tourism?
Hotel tax.
The hotel tax, right, sorry. It's limited to things that promote tourism in some way. Is that correct?
But also the arts.
Well, okay. Now, that limitation, is that something that we wrote into county law, or is that something that state law requires?
Mike?
If you look at the state law that allows this, every municipality that has the room tax has its own little section in the state law which specifies how it's to be used. You've got some counties that are using it to supplement their sheriff's budget, for example. You've got others that are using it for, like we do, for things to develop tourism. And it would have to require our section of that law to be rewritten to authorize us.
A broader use.
A different use, yes.
But if we committed some or all of it to the airport, could we arguably characterize that as a tourism promotion?
100%.
Okay.
And I think
All
we're
right.
going to.
I'm not an attorney, but
But we'll have to.
Okay. Well, I just want to be sure that we understand all the things that go into the process.
And that, I think, needs to be fully discussed. This is just coming out of discussion right now, and there's a lot of, I'm sure there are negatives to this too, and maybe the hoteliers won't be real happy about it, I don't know. But we can talk about it, and if someone wants to discuss something in the committee, then let's do that.
Yeah, I'm going to suggest this is a good committee conversation. Greg?
I'm just curious which committee. Is it the program committee or BCP? Should we be having these conversations in parallel, or they should be in succession? I guess I would look to the chair for guidance.
Yeah, I do think that hotel tax is a tourism function and probably belongs in HED, but
It would ultimately have to probably go through BCP as
yeah.
well.
Yeah.
I would ask you two to talk to each other and figure it out, okay?
Okay.
I'm okay with either one. Anything else?
Thank you.
From Mike before he does his resolution? Okay, Mike.
Resolution I, authorizing a public hearing on proposed local law number B of 2024, a local law overriding the tax levy limit for 2025. That's ID 12391, and I so move.
Deborah seconds. Mike.
This is something we do annually. Ever since the tax cap was put forward by New York State. I think there's only one time that we have actually gone over the tax cap, but it allows us the opportunity to do that should we have to. And it's just something that we always do to make sure that we have that opportunity and don't have to scramble last minute to try to figure out how to get a local law passed.
Okay, discussion. Lee.
Believe it or not, I would never say never when it comes to a tax increase. And there may come a time that we would have to raise by a substantial amount, and I might provide you that 60% to get you over the hump to maintain particular services to the constituents. But, you know, given the conversations we had just even 10 minutes ago about public perceptions with the taxes right now, and this is a long-held belief I've had, I just think the timing is bad and has been, and it sends a bad message to the public to be signaling that we're looking to override the budget at this point in the process. As I said, never say never, but it's a timing issue for me, and I'll oppose this, as I usually do.
Other discussion. Rich.
I will support the resolution, but I'm trying to remember the projected tax cap in the neighborhood of 3.5%.
5.09.
Okay. All right, so it's highly unlikely we would go over the tax cap, but we do want the room of maneuver, so I will support.
Greg.
Yeah, I want to maybe echo some of Lee's comments. I think right now, 5 and some percent, we're talking about maybe a 2%. I just want to remind everybody that we have a $45 million fund balance, which is 25% of our expenses, right? That's our fund balance policy. In the event that we would have to go over a tax cap, that should be where we're looking to go, not to pass it off on a levy increase. So I think it's incredibly irresponsible and the wrong message if we don't plan on using it to send it just in case we need it. And I don't like the idea of we always do something and this is what we should always do. So I wouldn't support this, and I would ask my other colleagues to not support this this year. One, the tax cap seems quite high at 5 and change percent. We're talking about a 2% or hopefully lower budget. And we have 45 million in fund balance set aside through our fund balance policy, which is what we should be using those, like that shouldn't just sit there. We should use those funds in the event that we need them. And I feel like if we were in a situation so dire that we'd have to go over the tax cap, that would be the time to look at fund balance, especially in today's economic climate.
Mike Lane.
I think it's basically become a pretty much standard that most municipalities do this. And it's just a matter of course that it's done just for the protection of the municipalities, because after the first couple of years, there were some that got trapped, not understanding what the tax cap was all about. I don't think that simply passing this and doing what we have done, and there's nothing wrong with having to do a course of conduct that we've done before, it means that you have any requirement one way or the other with respect to the budget. Greg, I know you're very anxious to see us spend down our fund balance, but there's reasons that we have that. And I do think that going forward with scheduling the public hearing on this proposed law is the right thing to do, and this is the right time to do it.
Veronica.
Mike led into my comment, which is that this particular resolution is authorizing a public hearing, not the law itself. If it passes, the public hearing will be on June 4th, 2024 at 5:30 o'clock in the evening. And at such time and place, all persons interested in the subject matter will be heard concerning the same. And I would love if people come and talk to us about their feelings on or ask us questions about what any of this budget stuff and tax stuff means, because I think we're all starting to be able to predict what all the rest of us are gonna say. So we'd love to hear some new voices, assuming we have this public hearing.
Greg.
Yeah, I'm surprised the Roberts rules folks in the room didn't catch the questioning of intent of the member on the floor. My intent is to not spend down the fund balance. My intent is for responsible government, fiscally responsible government, and government when we overcollect taxes in excess of our policies, that we use those to support the community in which they are collected from. So that is my intent, and I want to just make that clear for the record.
Randy.
Yeah, I'll vote for this resolution. I think a public hearing is a good idea. The fund balance, you know, Lori, I know you've done a lot of work in this, and thank you, because I know you understand it much better than I do. So, and we've had a few comments about that. I think we need education on the fund balance, and what your opinion is on, do we over-reserved, under-reserved, because I could be completely wrong, we could be wrong. And one of the things I'm unclear about is the unallocated fund balance. And we have a policy that we moved to 25%. I think there's additional funds that are unallocated above that 25%. Maybe at some point you could share that with us. I could be wrong or right, but thank you.
I'm going to take a quick turn. Several people mentioned what message are we sending, and the people that said that, I actually, probably am more aligned with you in terms of how the County finances should go. But the message, that's a different thing. I'm very clear on what the message is. This is an insurance policy, and nobody likes paying insurance. The best thing you can do with an insurance policy is not use it, and that's what I hope. But insurance is insurance, so that's why I'll be voting for it. Any last discussion? Okay, we have a vote, please.
Greg Mezzi.
No.
Capiller.
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff.
No.
Mike Sigler. I think he's gone, okay. Shauna Black.
Yes.
Travis Brooks.
No.
Randy Brown.
Yes.
Amanda Champion.
Yes.
Susan Curry.
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
Rich John.
Yes.
Ann Corman.
Yes.
Mike Lane.
Yes.
Dan Klein.
Yes.
I think Mike Sigler's in the waiting room again. Mike Sigler?
Yeah, I can't get the camera on, so you could just consider me. I'll just listen in. Thanks.
Okay. I have 10 ayes, 3 noes. Motion passes.
Okay, we will have a public hearing about this issue on June 4th. Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Next up is the Workforce Diversity Committee, Veronica Pillar, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. WDIC is going to be meeting tomorrow at 3 p.m. right here. The main item on the agenda is talking about climate surveys, both the past survey that was done in 2018 and everything that has happened since then, and the current state of related things, and some preliminary brainstorming for our next climate survey next year, which is going to be designed out of what we've learned of previous ones, and also in line with our strategic plan, which I thought we would have approved by tomorrow's meeting, but I guess we won't, but that is okay, because we're not making any final decisions. And I also, a couple things have reminded me at some point, I think in one of these meetings, I tossed out a question to you all, the legislators here, although it can be for anyone, which is, what do you need, what support do you need in order to embed equity in your decision-making? And Randy had an answer for me, but I haven't heard from anyone else, and I'd love to have that conversation. Not right now, that's not what a committee report is, but at any time, shoot me an email, shoot Travis whatever message he good heavens, thank you, I'm so sorry. I know I can say a couple things for me is I would find it easier to embed equity in my decision-making if I could see more clearly examples of other places and situations where that has gone well, where people are making decisions through an equity lens and maybe doing things that I haven't thought of. That would help me, sort of a you can't be what you can't see type of thing. I also would find it helpful to have shared vocabulary around equity and diversity and inclusion stuff. And maybe that's an easy one to put into the world because I know that our Chief Equity and Diversity Officer is already working on that for our whole organization. Anyway, I want to hear y'all's answers to that. I am sorry I'm having trouble talking. And finally, the unrelated, but bumping back to our veterans recognitions, I also want to thank Katrina for her service as well. Yep.
Questions or comments for the Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee? Ann.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Veronica. One of the things that I keep coming back to when Veronica asked the question, what would help, would be regarding the shared vocabulary is even just maybe once every meeting coming up with a different word that Veronica or others of us could share. And because if we don't have the same language when we start to work or we continue our work, then what I've seen in the last couple of years is people are trying to put it in their own language. And there is a separate language, kind of like medical terms. So if we all start to learn the lingo, the definitions, and the language, I think that would help us to understand the work that is being done and probably help with continuing the work. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Next up, Public Safety Committee, Rich John, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. The Public Safety Committee has not met since our last legislature meeting. We will be meeting a week from today, May 28th at 1 p.m. here in Chambers. I'd note the jail numbers are at 57 and 1 board out. And then I have, I just mentioned at our meeting next week, we were going to have a report regarding the CJC, but I think we're going to push that off for a month to get some more information. I think we're going to perhaps have Arel coming in to talk to us about the status of the jail construction work. I do have a resolution, but I'd take questions first if anybody had any.
Questions for the Public Safety Committee?
Okay. This is Resolution J, Contingent Fund Appropriation, District Attorney's Office, District Attorney Salary Change pursuant to Judiciary Law 183A, ID 12368, and I move it.
Mike Lane seconds. Discussion.
I just say this is statutory, and it requires that the DA's salary track with the county judges. They received a pay increase, and so we're doing that for the DA as well.
Any other discussion? Okay, let's have a vote, please.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Susan Curry,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
13 ayes, motion passes.
Good.
I do have another resolution that was member filed for timing purposes. I can handle that now or later.
I think we should do it at the end of the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you, unless you feel strongly.
I do not feel strong.
Good, you don't seem strong. I mean, you don't feel like you...
Oh. Burn.
You don't feel it, you don't seem like you feel strong. All right. Stop. Downtown Facilities Special Committee, Randy Brown, Chair.
Yes, thank you. We met last Tuesday. We invited Historic Ithaca in to discuss their thoughts and concerns about the Center of Government building in the DeWitt Historic District. Susan and Christine came, and we had a good 45-minute discussion about that. The end game is that their major concern was the Key Bank building on the corner, that is there any preservation opportunity for that? It could be built into the design. Susan and I were talking about that, and maybe we should get ahead of that and maybe have a structural exam independently done of that building. We'll talk about that at our next meeting, as opposed to having an architect come in, and when they look to build it, it would delay them. We hired a new project manager. His name's Christian, and I've forgotten his last name, but he just started. And looking forward, he's got a lot of experience in building, so he's also going to help Arel out with many other projects that we have going on. And the RFP for architects, engineers, I think maybe going out this week. I'm not sure if it made it out last week or not. It was short timing, but we won't be reviewing the architects and engineers until the July meeting, and we're going to have a group of legislators that will be evaluating all the RFPs that we receive from various architects, engineers, and we'll figure out how that's going to work. But and then we'll recommend to the entire legislature that they would vote on it, on the final person. And then our next meeting is the second Tuesday of the month.
Thank you. Questions or comments for the Downtown Facilities Committee? I'd like to hear a little more about the project manager, which I just was told the last name is Vasui?
Yes.
So not the name, but what the role of this new position? I don't know, Randy or Lisa or anybody?
I'll let you jump first.
So this is a position that's been in the facilities budget for some time, and they've had a difficulty in finding a candidate for the position, so we're very pleased for this. And the role of this individual will be helping with capital projects, namely Center of Government and many of the other capital projects that are forthcoming or currently in process under the facilities initiatives, which will free up Arel's time for the many other duties that he has before him.
Great. That's good news. Okay, anything else for Downtown Facilities Special Committee before we move on? Health and Human Services Committee, Shauna Black, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. We met Wednesday, May 15th, and we were joined by Josephine Gibson and Jenny Miller from the Mental Health Association, and they are renaming the organization to Mental Health Advocates starting, I think, next month. And they talked about some of the funding that our county has provided to them. Let's see here. We also had a conversation or a presentation about the, from Frank Krupa about the departmental opioid and overdose activities that are happening in our county. There's a dashboard that the Whole Health has been working on as well. And we do have a resolution to pass. Resolution K, I would like to move, authorizing use of staff recruitment and retention funding, ID 12386.
Travis seconds. Discussion.
This is some of the funding that has been, if I remember correctly, that has been allowed from the New York State office that provides additional funds to select positions in our mental health department. And if all of you will remember, I think we've had one or two of these in the past.
Any other discussion? Okay, let's have a vote.
Greg Mezzi.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff.
Yes.
Sigler.
Yes.
Shauna Black.
Yes.
Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Randy Brown.
Yes.
Amanda Champion.
Yes.
Susan Curry.
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
Rich John.
Yes.
Ann Corman.
Yes.
Mike Lane.
Yes.
Dan Klein.
Yes.
14 ayes. Motion passes.
Very good. Anything else for HHS?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Housing and Economic Development Committee, Greg Mezzi, Chair.
Thank you, Dan.
Oh, sorry, we do, looks
I
like.
did have a question. The dashboard at the Health Department of Whole Health, is that up and running?
It is, yes. There are also a handful of links. It's interesting because some of the data looks back 5 years, and so you could see the overdoses by year. One thing that was eye-opening for me, it breaks it down also, I believe, overdose deaths, and it breaks it down by occupation too. And it appears that food service workers have the highest rate of overdose here in our county, which I did not realize. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are back to Housing and Economic Development Committee, Greg Mezzi, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. We last met this afternoon at 4 o'clock for a special meeting, and thanks to the clerks and to Rob and team for getting that put together. I do have a resolution L on the agenda, doc ID 12420, a budget adjustment, tourism program, unspent 2023 grants, pending, unspent 2023 grants, and I would move that.
Thank you. Is there a second? Veronica seconds.
This, as you can see in the packet and the memo from Nick in our planning department, is essentially moving unspent grant funds into the current year. And also, I think, and Lori, maybe help me if I'm saying this wrong, but there was some change to budget adjustments required to pay in the year in which the grant or the grant activity takes place. Okay, sorry, I'm fumbling through that today, but it's more of a housekeeping resolution than anything to clean up the finances.
So just to help you out, the PO for the entire grant for multiple years can only be for each year. So if it's, I don't remember if it was a 2 or 3 year grant, but each year has to have a separate PO. And what happened is it got put in the first, that closed out, and the money wasn't in the budget.
Got it.
PO?
Purchase order.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Ready to vote on housekeeping?
Greg Mezzi.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Susan Curry,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
14 ayes, motion passes.
Our next meeting will be June 5th, Wednesday at 3 p.m. And I have nothing else to report.
Any other questions or comments about the Housing and Economic Development Committee? All right. Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, Lee Shirtliff, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Facilities and Infrastructure met on last Thursday, May 16th, and had a rather short agenda, but a lot of good information passed through. And just a couple of things to highlight. The chipping projects for the County Highway Department on 46 miles of roadway have pretty well been completed. They're moving into hot asphalt, and there is a website available for the public to take a look at to know where those projects will be occurring. And Jeff also advised us that they're moving into the design stages for the Cortlandt Street Bridge project. More than likely, that project will happen in the Village of Groton next year. And he was kind enough to have public meeting notices dropped off to my business today so I can distribute them in the community. They'll be having a public meeting on May 29th, next Wednesday, just to brief the local businesses and the area as to what to expect, because it'll be a significant disruption in the business district, but a well-needed project. The highlight of the meeting, we asked Roxanne Noble to brief us on a number of airport initiatives. And it's in keeping with some of the F&I structure this year to move our goals ahead, but also to hear some highlights from the various departments that report to us. Last month was buildings and facilities. And Roxanne had some pretty good news for us on different fronts. For instance, November, December, United Airlines will be adding an additional flight to Newark. And hopefully it will be something that will be popular and will be able to be continued. And she highlighted some of the work of the Air Service team. She also talked about some projects that are in the offing. One in particular, the Airport Rescue Firefighting Building project that's under development, could be, at this point, a $22 million project. And it's gone through a number of revisions. And the impact locally would be a $400,000 local share if it progresses. There are concerns about being able to maintain the customs facility. We will hear more. Strategic planning continues on. There will be some budgetary issues moving forward. Some mandate changes have occurred, and we may no longer be receiving funding from the TSA for the sheriff's checkpoint, which rolled us into the broader discussion, as Mike alluded to, under the Budget Committee report. There may be some rethinking or revisions in airport operations regarding contract staff, hiring of personnel that may be able to alleviate some of those stresses. So as the budget rolls out, we're going to hear quite a bit about the airport. Airport Day is Saturday, September 14th, large-scale event. And also, they wanted to bring it to our attention that there's an emergency drill on Saturday, June 15th. And that incorporates a number of different agencies and response groups and local health preparedness hospitals. They're looking for volunteers who may want to be a part of that drill and play patience and what have you. So if it's something that might interest some of the board members, legislator members, contact Roxanne or Josh at the airport, and we'll hear more about that. But even just to go and observe that coordination of activities is a great thing for our people to be able to witness. And we'll see more as time goes on about the strategic business plan. I'll ask Susan if I've missed anything on that. Okay. And our next meeting is next month. We had one resolution on the agenda that was handled underneath the consent agenda.
I'll just mention, I did one of those drills once at a different facility, and it's cool. If you get to wear scars and stuff, and bandages, and yeah, it's really fun. It's like Halloween. Mike Sigler.
I just had a couple questions for Lee. Are we at that point?
We are at that point.
I'm just wondering about the customs facility. If that were to close, I mean, we paid for that with federal money. Does that federal money have to get returned then? That's my understanding when it comes to the airport.
I'm going to bounce that over to Lisa.
So we received about $5 million from the Upstate Airport Initiative grant, and then we've bonded another $1 million or so to support that facility. So it's our understanding that with the state's permission, which we would need to receive the state's permission, and we would need to continue to use that building for an airport-related function. But we're still in the information gathering phase on that.
The concern that it was expressed is that the operational costs for the customs facility are about $273,000 a year, and last year the revenues were in the neighborhood of $12,000, and there had only been 26 operations. Maybe that will start to reverse as things recover, but it's of concern, especially on an ongoing basis.
What's Cornell had to say about, I mean, they were probably the primary beneficiary of having that facility. I didn't know if they weighed in on it.
I don't know that question was asked.
It wasn't discussed at the F&I committee, and I think that maybe one of the primary functions has been cargo.
I will say that whenever I was chair, I did write President Pollock an email asking about Cornell and them possibly making a contribution, and it did go ignored. So probably wasn't very high on their priority list.
There's also another, just to answer Mike, some thought that there may be some ability to split some of these duties and some of these operational costs with the Binghamton Airport. Federal regulations may or may not allow that at this point. The splitting of staff does not appear to be allowed, but something they do want to explore.
So they could touch here and then go on to Binghamton?
Possibly.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Or split staff as far as when they would be receiving.
Mike Lane.
Lee, I think one of the most interesting things we learned, your report was fine, but I thought the most interesting thing we learned was from Arel Lamaro, and he told us that, as you folks recall, someone stole a piece of our antique copper downspout from this building. They had a film from our cameras, but they couldn't quite identify it, who it was, or what the truck's license plate was, or whatever. But Arel kind of told us off the cuff that they've actually arrested that person. I think somebody from Elmira who had contacts in Ithaca as far as businesses or other kinds of things. And I just think that's terrific, and I don't really know the details of the investigation, but I want to thank, whether it's Elmira Police or whether it's our police or a combination of all of them, you don't hear about vandals being arrested very often. Unfortunately, Arel said that the copper downspout had been sold and destroyed for recycling, because that's what it was taken for, was the value of the copper in it. But all we have to do is look around at the vandalism on our buildings, on our war memorials, railroad bridges, places, highway bridges, and other things, to realize, what people who don't care anything except about being able to say, see what I did, to be able to deface public property, and that's a bad thing. So I thought it was kind of interesting that in this one case, at least, perhaps justice may be served.
Anything else for the Facilities and Infrastructure Committee? Greg?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on one thing with the airport. We had our Air Service Board meeting yesterday. That third United flight, which starts October 27th, is available for a short period of time till I believe the first week in December or so, as a trial period, especially with the influx of people traveling for the holidays, et cetera. So these are often used by airlines to sort of make the test case to see if there's any erosion in flight numbers or rates on their other flights if they add additional services. So this is something that I know the airport is actively marketing and working with the universities around breaks and things like that. So that's just, that's of note. And then the last thing is, as it relates to Cornell's involvement, I know that the Student Assembly at Cornell actually has put together and funded buses to try to get those early departures where we sort of live in a on-demand transportation difficulties at times, I guess, people have early morning. So they arranged flights to try to get more people to fly out of Ithaca. They also did the same for Syracuse flights, but they were trying to make a difference and trying to play their part and get more people to, as the airport now says, fly local and reach far. So it was a good air service meeting. There's definitely a lot of these topics that are being discussed, and I think we're on the right path, but it definitely is probably a long road to full stability. So just wanted to give that update as it relates to air service.
Thank you for adding that on.
Anything else for the Facilities and Infrastructure Committee? Okay, thank you. Next up, Government Operations Committee, Amanda Champion, Chair.
Great, thank you. Government Operations has not met since our last meeting, but I do have 2 resolutions. Should I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay. Resolution M, resolution to update the Administrative Policy Manual, Policy 05-12, Grant Applications, Acceptance, and Award Management, ID 12331. I would move that.
Is there a second? Susan seconds. Discussion.
Yeah, just another one of our policies. It's quite long and involved, and thank you very much to our staff who spent the time and put this together, and I think it adds a lot to our policy manual. And I think this went through our committee and then BCP as well. Yeah.
Lee.
I voiced some concerns at budget and thought about it and rethought about it, have reread this, and 99% of what's in here I thoroughly agree with. I continue to be troubled with parts of the policy, not the resolution, a very small part, and it's just some things that remain unclear to me. And this kind of builds a little bit about on what Veronica spoke of under workforce, under her report earlier. And here's my problem. We're mandating through this policy our departments to manage the grants, and we've added some key language here, very particular, through an equity lens, ensuring fair and inclusive practices, which is a goal of our county. And further along, it also states that we'll use the grants to actively promote diversity, equity, and inclusion principles. Okay, that's problematic to me, not so much from a political standpoint, but from a practical standpoint. And I'm thinking this through from having managed millions of dollars worth of grants. And I think about the processes we went through, the applications, the reviews, what have you. I think about some of the grants that are pass-throughs that come to us that we've accepted. And I don't know how we as a county government can further impose some regulation on ourselves to further review these grants through an equity lens. And a few minutes ago, you know, it was noted. Are we speaking the same language? Do we share the same equity values? I'm not sure. I think there's 14 sets of lenses here at the table. And what makes it difficult for me is it doesn't answer in here for me, you know, who makes this judgment call as to whether the grant's being applied in a manner of equity, diversity, and inclusion that we collectively would like to see. Is there, we've got a grant manager's position, okay? We've got a grant team that will be reviewing these. But who makes this judgment call? Who decides if this grant has been applied in such a manner? And consequently, what are the consequences? It's one of two things when I look at it. One is we've put requirements upon ourselves, and if this judgment call gets made in some subjective manner, because there's nothing that outlines an objective manner in which we're going to do so, what's the resolution? Do we turn the grant money back? Do we not ask for it? Do we go back and rewrite the grant in some manner to meet our requirements in addition to what the grant requirements may be? Or is this simply something that is symbolic and looks good? And I don't like to see policies that are done so much for symbolism. And I don't mean to characterize it as being symbolic. I think Tompkins County in many ways does every day demonstrate its commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. But I really have a difficulty in supporting a policy that adds this level or layer of self-imposed regulations to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Other discussion? Lisa.
Just for a point of clarification, and I think your point, Lee, about is this symbolic or is this actually grounded in some more practical guidance for operationalizing? I think that the intention is that with the help of our Chief Equity Diversity Officer, and one of the next policies in the hopper is the county's MWBE policy, which we've, many state and federal grants have MWBE requirements, and with little local guidance as to how to actually proceed along those lines. And so I think that what this next policy will do will be to offer and provide some of that practical guidance, as well as provide us as a county with considerations to be had about, do we want to create further goals for ourselves as a county. So something will be forthcoming to try to provide further guidance on this, to clear up that language, or to have something to point to.
Ann.
Thank you, and also just to clarify the MWBE, if folks don't know what that is minority and or women-owned business enterprises. But I wanted, why I raised my hand was just to reference back to what I was saying earlier. What I've seen is, questions, come up, genuine questions come up with what, in regards to what Lee said. But I think it stems back to things like when counties talk about safety, if we were talking about, safety of our residents, we understand what that means, and we might clarify that in different ways. If we talk about like health issues, the health of our residents. This is another aspect, another aspect of the health of our community and the health and thriving of our community. So I am very glad that we are including more of this language as we go forward. Thank you.
Other discussion? Rich?
Yeah, Lee, I share your concern in that it does seem kind of vague. But, that paragraph I think you're referring to starts out with "to the extent applicable." And I believe the intent is to mesh this with other policies so that it is coherent. And I don't have any problem with the overall intent of trying to reach our larger county goals through when we're using grant money. I don't think it sets up different criteria. But to your other point, I think we do have to be careful about using new and different words or changing the meanings of words, which I struggle with because it's hard enough to understand what we're talking about regularly. And then if we're trying to now incorporate new meanings that not everybody understands, it gets far more complicated. But why I raised my hand really was just to thank the county administrator and your staff for the work you did on this. I know this has been a year and a half in the making. And as our chair indicated at the beginning of the meeting, we get a lot of money through grants, and we should be trying to get money through grants because it's such a valuable resource to implement very specific programming. And the work that went into this policy, I think, is really good and long overdue. We should have had a grant policy years ago. We just didn't really think about it, but it's like sales tax or it's like property tax. It's fundamental to how we operate, so thank you. And I will support.
Mike Sigler.
I guess I just don't understand what it is we're supporting or not supporting. I mean, if we have a grant person and they're applying for grants, are we saying to that grant person, only apply for grants that will apply to certain communities? Or are we saying that when we get a grant, then we're going to break that up according to a certain metric, according to which community needs it more? I mean, usually when we go for a grant, we're going for something relatively big. I mean, water, sewer, for example, would jump out at mind. I mean, does that mean we're going to focus? I would think we would focus on whatever the greatest need of the sewer line is, not which community is impacted. I guess I just don't understand how it would work. And you had an answer for the first part, and somebody else probably had an answer for the second. But like, if I'm going out for a grant, how would I do that?
I think that we keep our county goals in mind when we're searching for grants and administering grants. And I don't read this language to say more than that. And we should be doing that. I don't think we're creating additional legal requirements on ourselves, and I don't think that was intended. But I didn't write the policy, so I'd defer to.
So I'll take a shot. The MWBE and minority women-owned business requirements, as well as there are other acronyms as well. These apply. These come into play after we've received a grant, and if we have to do any further contracting. It's a commitment that and in some cases, a requirement that we utilize 30% of the contractors, in some cases more, will be minority or women-owned businesses. So that's, it depends on the type of grant, whether it's coming from the federal government or the state government. And what we're saying is, or what I was saying earlier is that we are going to be updating that particular policy, the MWBE policy, to as a reference point to this policy.
Veronica.
I forgot what I was going to say. Can I skip to the end of the queue?
Yes, Travis.
I just was going to answer Mike's questions with what Lisa said. But I do want to say something about shared language real quick. I don't think we share language, period, whether it's safety, whether it's about diversity and equity. There's folks that don't stand for the pledge because what looks like safe, what looks like liberty, what looks like justice to them is very different than what it looks like to others. So I think that is an issue in this county. I don't know how to fix that, but I don't think we share the same language for a variety of reasons around these issues. And it's kind of sad that we don't. It's kind of difficult to be in places where people aren't worrying about things the same way you are, that things don't affect you the same way they affect. We make decisions based on our experiences and not others. So, I just want to make sure that we're clear. We don't speak the same language on a lot of those.
Amanda.
Yeah, I hope people actually read the policy because it actually defines all of this stuff in there. It's long policy, I get that. It might have taken you a while, but it's fascinating to me that the white men are questioning the one little spot in there where it talks about working with minority and women-owned businesses. It's not saying you can only work with those people. It's not saying you have to work with those people. It's saying there are regulations, there are laws that we should follow, and as a county, we have goals, we have ethics, we have things that we're aiming for, and we should therefore aim for them through this policy and all of our policies. If you read the parts where it mentions MWBE, it's saying as outlined in state regulations or in compliance with utilization requirements. I don't read anything in here that's saying we're not going to work with white men anymore. So I think you can let go of your fear a little bit. And whether it's a different language or not, we're all seeking safety, we're all seeking health, we're all seeking equity, and these policies aren't perfect, but they're one step in the direction to making the county do the things that we want it to do. So I'll stop there.
Okay, I've got Veronica, if you're ready, and then Mike Sigler, and then Lee.
Oh, well, luckily by now, I think Travis and Amanda and Lisa said what I was going to say and then some better. Except that about learning new language, we all have to learn a ton of new language for this job, I think. This packet is full of some layperson's language, but also financial jargon and some legalese, and we've all at least learned to just read single sentence pages with 17 whereases like they're normal. And I've actually grown to very much appreciate them. But because that particular formatting and language has a function that once I've understood it, I think oh, I get why we use it, and we're all on the same page. And we can all do that with lots of different things.
Mike Sigler.
Well, while I appreciate my colleague thinking that white men should just shut up, clearly, from what you just said.
That's not what I said, Mike.
Very clearly what you just said. I represent an awful lot of white men. I represent an awful lot of white women. And I think that, yes, if I have a question on a policy for something that we're already doing, then yeah, I think I should be able to ask that question without you trying to read any kind of intent in there. So thank you for the Robert's Rules of Orders that you've handed out earlier. But yes, I have a question as to what this means. And you're saying it doesn't mean anything, which then leads me to the question, why are we passing something if it doesn't mean anything? Because if we're already doing it, clearly we're not under what you're thinking, because we're making a change. And that's what my question was about. And I'm sorry if I have to ask a question so that I understand, because if I don't understand, I'm going to assume that other people don't understand it as well. Thank you.
Lee.
Just to be clear, I was not questioning, will not question MWBE. It was to Section 2A and 2B with regard to equity lens. There is no definition of what equity lens is. That was my point. How do we get to that definition? And what would be the process of determining if the grant is being applied equitably? Simply put, and I've worked with MWBE for years and incorporated that into a lot of contracts, even before it may have been required. Thank you.
Shauna.
Yeah, so I will just add a little personal note here. My wife started her business 3 years ago. She worked for a big firm. And it was very hard the first few years whenever she started her business. There was very little income. It took over a year for her to get her certification to be a minority women-owned business owner. And ever since she's received it, the one thing that she does look for whenever she's applying and putting in bids for jobs is, or organizations that offer this and look for this certification, because it means that they do value diversity, they do value equity, and they're looking for people that have struggled along the way. And you know, for me and my family, my wife's job is what pays our bills. And so, you know, I actually really appreciate the fact that we're headed in this direction, and we're saying that as a county, you know, we're looking at the people that are struggling. We're looking at the women, the minorities, the people who haven't always had it easy. So thank you, Lisa and staff, for doing this. I do appreciate it, and I certainly will be supporting it.
Lisa.
Just wanted to make one overarching comment about this policy, and that is it came about through the work of the consultant that we hired through an over-target request for I think the 2023 budget. A grants coordinator who worked, Bridget Nugent is largely responsible for this policy and worked with that consultant. And these are best practices that came from that consultant's recommendation, the entirety of the policy, and to have a workflow, and so that's where this came from. The last time it was updated was 30 years ago.
Veronica.
I don't know if this is a comment or a question, or I wasn't paying attention, but to Lee's thing about the equity lens, I guess, Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, but some more established definition of an equity lens and what that means is coming to our organization eventually. Yeah.
Is also forthcoming with an organizational equity plan by the end of the year through our Chief Equity Diversity Officer as well. So hopefully we can have some more definitions.
And in the meantime, I think like Lee, you mentioned consequences, but I assume the intent of the policy is not to like judge our grant recipients within our organization and like decide if they're doing things right or not, but to like lay out like this is our intent, incorporating the values, and enable more support from our grants coordinator and or administration. But is that right? I went back and watched the committee meeting recently, but I wasn't there.
I think so, if I'm following what you're saying.
Mike Lane.
I'd like to call the question, please.
We need a second, is that correct? Deborah seconds. There's no discussion, so we just go into the vote to whether to call the question or not.
Greg Mezzi?
Yes.
Veronica Pillar?
Yes.
Lee Shurtleff?
Yes.
Mike Sigler?
Yes.
Shauna Black?
No.
Travis Brooks?
Yes.
Randy Brown?
Yes.
Amanda Champion?
No.
Susan Curry,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
No.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
No.
10 ayes, 4 noes. Questions called.
Okay, we proceed right to the vote then on the resolution itself. Resolution M is updating the Administrative Policy Manual grant applications.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
No.
Mike Sigler,
No.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Susan Curry,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
12 ayes, 2 noes. Motion passes.
Okay, I think I have another resolution. Let me just find it.
H.
This was on the consent agenda, authorizing, Resolution H, authorizing a public hearing on local law number A of 2024, allowing for the continuation of the county holding virtual public meetings until July 1st, 2026, ID 12403.
We have a second. Deborah seconds.
And I would just say that this is to set up the public hearing. As you all know, we've been, over the past 2 years, able to hold virtual meetings where if we have quorum in chambers, 1 or 2 or a couple of people can be virtual if they have extenuating circumstances, that sort of thing. And that was set to, that state law was set to expire. The governor extended that for 2 years, but we need to pass a local law to be able to continue to do it here, so.
Discussion. Mike Lane.
I asked for this to be pulled because I voted against it in committee. I very rarely vote against a resolution to authorize a public hearing, but I think it's time that we got back to in-person meetings. I understand the virtues of the hybrid meetings. I fully do. But I also understand the virtues of seeing everybody across the table from one another. And the fact that it takes a lot to run these hybrid meetings of our staff, whether it's sending out the Zoom links, whether it's setting up the equipment, having it set up for people out of area. I fully expect that I won't be successful here, but I think it's time that we got back to in-person meetings. And I realize from time to time people will miss meetings. Happened before, and it's going to happen in the future. But that's why I'll be voting against it.
Ann.
Thank you. I think going forward, I really have a hard time thinking that we're not going to be doing a Zoom option, especially for staff. So I think the Zoom option was probably going to stay. I think broadcasting to YouTube is here to stay for our county. And so talking to folks, when I talk to them about different issues and that they come forward with, or I talk to them and bring up in the community, I often encourage people to look at joining one of our advisory boards, running for some type of office. And so to have this accommodation for people, whether it's childcare, transportation, environmental reasons where we don't have as many cars on the road. There's just so many reasons that this makes running for office or contributing to our county government, and also, I'm talking about other municipalities, but I'll stick to county. So to have people participate, whether at the legislature, we're talking more at the legislature point of view, or the legislature level, I think as the more accessible that we can make it for folks, either currently for people who are in office or for people who are thinking about running for office. I think we include more people and increase our diversity by having this policy. Thank you.
Shauna.
Thank you. Mike, I also like seeing people across the room. I think you could read people better. Whenever I'm at home, I never know if there's a kid running behind me or a dog that's going to jump on my lap. So I do appreciate being in person. With that said, I mean, we have 14 legislators. Many people have jobs. You know, some people go to training. They travel for their jobs. And the one thing that I think has been really helpful in keeping all of us healthy is the fact that if we're not feeling well, if we have COVID symptoms, if we have a headache, if something else is going on, then we're able to stay home and not share our germs with our colleagues. Because I mean, we're literally sitting a foot away from each other. And so if we're sneezing, more than likely Travis and Amanda, if I'm sick, are going to get sick within the next few days. So the one thing I would think might be helpful is that perhaps we're less flexible on the reasons why people cannot attend meetings. So I would just ask my colleagues, you know, extenuating circumstances I know could be pretty vague, but you know, perhaps we're a little bit stricter with that.
Anybody else have their hand up? Greg, okay.
Yeah, I guess I would just ask Mike, in this proposal, how are we viewing this through the DEI lens? Right? How are we taking into account creating greater accessibility for government and not more restrictive access and more restrictive participation, right? But I do think that this is a way where familial, you know, issues that may arise or primary caregiver or transportation circumstances, job-related issues, all of those type of things, we should be looking at ways to expand our government, make government more accessible, not further restrict government through policies. It's 2024, right? Life happens online, life happens in person, and life happens in a combination of the two. And I think continuing to have this conversation about we need to have people in here because this is how we used to do it, well, moving forward, I really feel like this is the way it's going to be done. So this, I think, is a better form of government than 12 or 14 or 16 people just sitting around a table. This creates accessibility where accessibility previously didn't exist. So I fully support continuing with hybrid and online options. And I think if we're going to have serious conversations and serious debate about equity and inclusion, that we should have that in the debate, and this should be a topic that we address when we're looking at how our government is accessible for those to participate in various forms.
Rich.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mike, that it's better in person so we can see each other. It is interesting how much more you get in 3 dimensions. What I would say, though, is for people who have been sick or unable to attend, they still can participate, and the people they represent are still represented in some measure. And for those who are watching on television or at home, I would note that this has really not been abused by this legislature, in my mind, that we have really had very good participation in person, and it is the exception. And so I would support the resolution because of that good behavior. You know, if we saw some real change, I think after this round, I would think differently. Thanks.
Any other discussion? Lee.
As you reminded me under resolution I, this vote is simply for the public hearing on the local law, and we will get a second swing at this after we hear what the public thinks of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Veronica.
I'm definitely voting for this, but I have a question. If we didn't extend the virtual authorization, I understand that all of the legislators in this case would have to physically be here or be square, but if members of the public or other staff want to come and talk to us, do they also have to physically be here?
No.
No.
We would still run the same operation, but the staff and public commenters could come online.
Okay. What about like our staff who are not like running the meeting, but?
Yeah, they could still attend online.
Okay, thanks.
The whole point of this is the quorum of us in order to have
Right.
the meeting.
Any other discussion? Vote.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Shauna Black.
Yes.
Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Randy Brown.
Yes.
Amanda Champion.
Yes.
Susan Curry.
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
Rich John.
Yes.
Corman.
Yes.
Mike Lane.
No?
Dan Klein.
Yes.
13 ayes, 1 no, motion passes.
Thank you. We'll mention that we have not yet taken a class photo for this 4-year session, which we need to do before our terms are up. And it is good, it's a challenge to get everyone here in one time, so keep an eye out for that invitation.
Oh, no, Annie.
Annie's not here.
I thought Rob took a picture of it.
Miss Annie.
Let's all go to Florida, and we'll go.
There've been very, very few times when everybody's been here. All right. Government Operations Committee, you're still in your report. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, no, I'm set. I'm all set.
Anything, does anybody have anything for government operations? Okay, thank you. We are now up to individual member filed resolutions, and we have 2 today. No, we have 1 today. One's been withdrawn, sorry. Resolution O. Rich?
Yeah, this is a resolution in support of certain proposed emergency services legislation at the New York State Legislature, Doc ID 12441, and I move it.
Is there a second? Lee?
And as you may recall, we talked about this at our last legislature meeting, that there's a proposed package of legislation related to emergency medical services that NISAC has advocated for, and other counties have submitted resolutions on. I brought it as a member file just so we could get it on our agenda and get it to Albany if we voted in favor.
Discussion. Lee?
2 things very briefly. One is the legislation is in support of services being provided at the local level and may ultimately provide additional funding mechanisms for local governments to continue essential services. The second part is you're in the last 3 weeks of the legislative session. There was some hope that many of these component legislative pieces would have made it into the governor's budget package. They did not. And now it is timely that the legislature hear from the county legislatures so that before they end the session, they may move forward on these things. So it is a critical timing piece. So, and I thank Legislator John for bringing this package forward.
Other discussion? I'll just take a quick turn. I've probably mentioned this before. I've been following this issue for a really long time. There's nothing happening. Nobody knew what to do. Everyone was just stuck. Everyone was just watching the whole system decline. And suddenly there's a lot of activity. There's a lot of consensus that we need to do something. And so it's really exciting for me personally to see all this stuff on the docket. I don't know if every word in every resolution that they're looking at is a good one, but the spirit is in the right place. And so I'm very happy that this is being brought forward and definitely will support it. Okay, let's have a vote.
Greg Mezzi.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff.
Yes.
Mike Sigler.
Yes.
Shauna Black.
Yes.
Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Randy Brown.
Yes.
Amanda Champion.
Yes.
Susan Curry.
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Ann Corman.
Yes.
Mike Lane.
Yes.
Dan Klein.
Yes.
14 ayes, motion passes.
Okay, minutes of the previous meeting. Does somebody want to move that? Veronica moves. Shauna seconds. Any discussion? Vote, please.
Greg Mezzi.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff.
Yes.
Sigler.
Yes.
Shauna Black.
Yes.
Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Randy Brown.
Yes.
Amanda Champion. Susan Curry,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
14 ayes, minutes accepted.
Thank you. Is there any unfinished business? Okay, we are going to go into executive session. Executive session will be for the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. Deborah moves. Is there a second? Randy, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, let's have a vote, please.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion, Susan Curry,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
14 ayes, motion passes.
Thank you. We will go into, we'll take a break. We'll go into executive session, and we do not expect to take any action when we come out of executive session.